Good evening, everyone. Today is March 10th. It's 7:04, and we have a quorum present. So I'm going to call the Warrant Committee meeting to order, and we'll start with a roll call.
It was all present.
Elizabeth Kelly present.
Joe Hunt, present.
Steve Callahan present.
Ashley Duke present.
Brent Nelson, present.
Peter Michelson present.
Okay. We have a busy agenda tonight. First we'll approve some minutes and then talk about our calendar. We have a number of articles, and the order that I thought we would take them in is the order they appear in the agenda. So we'll do the citizens petition first, and then Castle Hill sewer system. We have a number of people here on that article, and then we'll do appropriation to the Conservation Trust Fund, additional appropriation to Danielson Pond Dam, the reappropriation of the remaining borrowing for the water treatment plant, landfill closure, attorney, and engineering, appropriation of Sledding Hill engineering, and a community CPR training revolving fund, the town meeting quorum bylaw, change in a local election date, and the two special legislation articles one to allow digital access, and the other is for mandatory retirement age for fire department members. Now, we went very long our last meeting, but I think so. My plan is let's go to like 8:30-ish, not a hard stop, but I want to save time to talk about the override modeling scenarios and the stuff that I sent around on the deliberation plan for that article. So that's our agenda. Okay, so the first item, did everybody have a chance to review the record-setting minutes that Ed sent out? I think it has to be a record for a number of pages, Ed.
I was super impressed. Got a lot in there.
The initials is AI.
They got done very quickly by AI. That's for sure. Yeah.
I couldn't believe you sent that along. Within 24 hours, I saw it. So, well, it's fresh in my head. Let's go.
Yeah. Any comments or questions on that?
There was one, I can't pull it up right now, of course, but there was one note about somebody mentioned the 131 people on the wait list for Medfield preschool was attributed to me. I did not know that. So it was somebody else.
Yeah, Jeff Larson said that.
I think that's right.
Okay, so we can fix that.
Who said it?
Jeff Marsden.
Oh,
I think the minutes
that's right.
the minutes reflect that Joe said it, so it was probably Jeff Marsden who said it. So just make that. So I would entertain a motion then with that edit to approve the March 2nd Warrant Committee minutes.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, I guess we don't have anyone. Oh, wait, hold on.
There's no.
No one is okay. So I guess we can do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Opposed? No, motion passed. Okay. So the calendar, I think everybody should plan on having a meeting on that one date we were holding in April, or maybe
Is that April 6th?
April 6th, the Monday. I think based on the way things are lining up, we're going to need that meeting. So everybody should hold that date.
Because people want to discuss opening day.
Yeah,
That.
you can give us an update on how things went, right?
Yeah, okay.
The game will be over by then.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. All right. So, Mr. Saladino, good evening. Come on up, sit down and join us. We have the citizens petition that was submitted by Pete. That is just a second. Let me get everybody should have had a copy of that sent around. thank you for submitting the questionnaire.
Yeah.
We like it when petitioners do that. It saves us a lot of headache and time. So thank you for doing that. I think, one thing before we get into this, I think we will have the Park and Rec people in on the 24th. So we'll have a chance to listen from them because they have an article for the for the prefabricated building at Hinckley. They can talk to us about that. One thing that we just found out today that you should know.
Breaking news.
There was a survey done that was
Saw it.
released. Okay, so that's
I
right.
haven't seen the results yet.
But there's a copy right there if you want one.
Yeah.
Right there. Anyway, with that, I will turn it over to you and then, give us an overview maybe of the article. I'm sure everybody's read it.
Okay.
It's fairly long, but, and then I will open it up to questions.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think it's great to be back. I'm happy to be back here at the Warrant Committee, but this time on the other side of the aisle here. And for those of you that don't know, Elizabeth, I haven't had a chance to meet you. I was a Warrant Committee for 2 years, stepped down in December. Thought there's some other ways I could contribute. One of the ways was through the citizen petition. I think that we have a very narrow window with the timeline that's going on with the school and with other items in the town to put together a plan for the FAF Center, which to my surprise remains without a plan this many months since it was closed and many more months and years since it was identified as a problem, first in 2017 and then again in 2025. That's not a great look. And I was really surprised, honestly, that it fell to a citizen's petition for someone to come up with a plan. That's also not a great look. But to that end, I just jumped at it and tried to put together the best I could. It may not be perfect, but it's what I thought would be the closest to what people were trying to do and would like. And I'll just base off of how I arrived at that. I went back and did a bunch of research. And in 2017 was when that architectural firm said, hey, there's a problem with the FAF Center. And in 2018, there was a warrant at the 2018 annual town meeting, which referenced $60,000 that had been previously allocated for a feasibility study for a new building for the Parks and Rec. And a motion passed in 2018 for $100,000 for an OPM study, feasibility study for a new building for the community, for the Parks and Recreation Commission. In 2019 and 2020, there was a townwide master plan, and one of the top recommendations, there were 12 recommendations and about a 400-page document, so that these are really the distillation. One of them said we should, build an intergenerational community center and a new building for Parks and Rec. So this was like what everyone wanted to do. It was very clear. In 2021, $15,000 was established on the long-range capital plan. So the town's been planning for this. In 2025, there was a Park and Recreation last year. $165,000 was allocated for a temporary use that did not actually come to pass with the one-year plan. As I recall, it was presented as a one-year plan for $165,000 for modular buildings at Hinckley. And one of the reasons why Hinckley was not as good of a solution is because the Parks and Rec has said, is that there are environmental problems that will prevent them from building a sufficiently large building at Hinckley. So there are two things going on at Hinckley. One is they're coming back again this year with a second proposal for modulars, which are temporary buildings, so they don't maybe necessarily have to go under the permanent planning and building committee, which is a little bit sketchy, but they're trying to have those be long-term solution. So it's sort of a long-term Band-Aid. Somehow it was not sufficient at $165,000 last year, but we're meant to believe that it will be somehow sufficient for the long term, but with less money this time. I haven't really read their proposal. It doesn't really matter. The key elements of what I'm trying to propose as a citizen's petitions here relate to FAF Center. It does not really have, Pinkley has nothing to do with it. The land is a beautifully located central asset for the community. Parks and Recreation happens to be the command and control of the asset. So they have a decision that they should be making as the stewards of that land, but that hasn't happened. Instead, they're proposing to build temporary buildings on a different part of their land. But the community has a vested interest in doing something with that land because it's centrally located. The kids can walk straight from Dale School. And that's why last month, when the Parks and Rec person came and presented to you, they talked about how they're having to do more with middle schoolers because the older kids are able to make it to the UCC, but the younger kids can't, the schedule doesn't work out. People aren't able to drop off the kids all the way over at UCC because, and by the way, they're only at UCC on a 1-year rolling lease. So the town doesn't have a solution. And even the proposal for the buildings that are prefab buildings, which is another problem with their proposal, is prefab buildings really, but at Hinckley is those are for administrative facilities. They're not designed to be used for curriculum and planning. So there's like a number of stacked problems, but the biggest one in my mind is that the community has already allocated 100, by what I can read, is $60,000 in 2018 was a prior reference, $100,000 in 2018 for a feasibility study that never happened, or if it did happen, it stopped. And one of the reasons it stopped was because there was all sorts of problems with Park and Rec, as we know. So we never got our feasibility study. We never got a plan. That's not my fault. That's not anyone in this room's fault, but it happened. And so now we're in a situation where the school building committee has done an amazing job under difficult circumstances, but they are going forward with an OPM plan on that land next to it. So are we really going to build a school with a decrepit building next to it? No, we're not. What they have talked about, and Peter, you can talk about it. They've talked about what should we do with the FAP land? Well, we'll plan to incorporate it in some scenarios. And so their OPM is going to come to you guys in 10 months from now and say, we do have some scenarios that incorporate the FAP Center land. And everyone's going to say, well, that's great because it could really be a better experience. It could be better, all these different reasons why it's more expansive, all these pluses and positives. And that's wonderful. It probably will be better. But the point is, when you're faced with the comparison of better versus nothing, you're going to choose the better, probably. But that being said, at next year's town meeting, whatever's proposed by the school building committee will require a 2/3 vote by everyone there to incorporate any changes to approve the moving of the FAF land into the school, because it's not the school's land, it is the Parks and Rec's land. And so if that's what everyone wants to do, especially if the school building, which is going to be with us for so many years, it's a wonderful idea. It could be a great idea, but it should have a chance to be compared against a proper plan that is not that. That is not the school. That is for the community. That is envisioned in 2018, was funded in the Long Range Capital Plan in 2021, was highly featured in the 2019 and 2020 top recommendations in the annual. What is the purpose of a annual plan if we don't ever do the things we recommend, or even do the things that were studied, that were funded to do? There's one last important point, which is in 2022, after the sort of Dale failed vote, the town passed a bylaw update that said the permanent planning and building committee should be involved and should be in charge of all buildings that are not schools. I thought it was a good idea at the time, and I probably voted for it. Doesn't really matter. It's in the code that says the permanent planning building committee is in charge of all non-schools. So this, while a nice thing, and actually I thought it was well written, I didn't see the results. This is not $165,000 of a feasibility study of what should we do for the beautifully central located plot. And it's not what we paid for. By the way, last month, you guys listened to the Parks and Recreation Committee talk about their revolving fund, which according to the annual budget shows that money from those feasibility studies was in that budget, was in that revolving fund. So one of the reasons why I think you noted over 5 years, the number kept going up. Well, one of the reasons is the budget, the money in that in that account probably was not enough to fund a feasibility study. Well, I don't know exactly why they didn't do these things over the last 5 years, but they didn't. And so we don't have a feasibility study. And so we're about to roll into next year's vote next year with no plan other than the school building committee's plan, which is kind of a bummer, especially since we spent all the money. I think we may have spent the money. Maybe it's still sitting there. I don't know. They made a comment online and social saying that they still have the money. They can do a feasibility study, but they're not supposed to do a feasibility study. The town bylaw says that the permanent planning and building committee, for just this reason, should be in charge of doing a feasibility study, because it incorporates things beyond the Parks and Recreation Committee. It should also incorporate the views of the Council on Aging, on whoever else, right? Because it's supposed to be for the town beyond just the Parks and Rec. So the town right now is not following its own bylaws, quite honestly. And that would be like kind of a bummer, no big deal. We'll do a vote next year. But when we do the time for the vote, where there's a 2/3 override vote that makes it all go away, and it's no problem because the town will have voted to be fine with that, we will only have had one solution, which is the solution for the school on that land. And when you have a choice of either voting for the beautiful school proposal versus not, it's sort of a no-brainer that you're going to say, well, let's just make the best use of it. There's no other options that have been presented. But it's not fair that there's no other options that have been presented. We've allocated the money. We've planned for it in the long-range planning committee. The townspeople said they wanted it, and just nobody did it. And so that's why I did this citizens petition article, because I just don't think it's right. I don't run a business that does construction. I didn't even go to the previous Parks and Recreation building. I've been to the FAP Center just a few times in my life. My kids loved it. But my point is, I think the town deserves a vote on what to do with that beautifully central located plot without just tossing it over to the school and saying we don't have a better plan or we can't afford it. Because theoretically, we could afford it in 5 years from now or 10 years from now. It doesn't matter. We could do a plan and say we don't have the money now. We'll do it in 10 years. But the second we give it over to the school, it's gone forever. And then people are talking about trying to drive their kids up to the all over town for other places to get their kids for whatever programming.
Right.
And when it should be centrally located, it's right there. The kids can walk to it. All the kids love. That's one of the things that the kids love, is the ability to go uptown and do the things that they do after school. So I really think it reflects not great on, I don't know, not this organization here, but in general, the fact that we got to this point where we sort of are just okay with the fact that we're going to A, not follow the bylaws, B, not follow the feasibility study that was passed in 2018, C, not follow the long-range planning committee, and then totally ignore the aspirations allocated that came out of the annual planning, the long-range planning. Just seems, suboptimal, honestly. And I think there's an opportunity, according to which you should ask them, according to the Parks and Recreation Committee, they either spent the money or they have the money for the feasibility study. So it actually could be net neutral. There may need to be no, but I don't think that
we'll be.
You can ask them.
And then we'll ask.
But anyway,
I have a lot of questions for you.
but anyway, it should go to the Permanent Planning and Building Committee to do it, not what they said that they were doing in social posts. They said they were authorized in 2018 to do this, so they're still going to do it. And this is what we got.
I don't think the feasibility. That's a
Nobody's
community
saying that's a
survey.
feasibility
That's
study.
not a feasibility
That's
survey.
that's a survey.
That's
That's just a community.
Well, why are they doing a survey at this point in 2026 when we have a 2018 article that said, please do a feasibility study? Well, they're jamming it in.
But we'll get into that. We'll get into that. So I mean, I have a lot of questions, but I want everybody else to get a chance to ask questions.
Let's ask that. Just a quick question. At the beginning, you said the timing is tight.
Mhm.
So if, let's say, in May, this petition is approved, that's when it can begin.
Maybe.
And is there, I mean, how does that, can it get done correctly within that period of time between then and the following, probably less than a year, or maybe a year later? You'll be looking at another article for the school. Is that correct, Peter?
I
So
think
the school,
Yes, so
it's not a big part of our meeting in 2027. There will be a special town meeting.
fall.
And my guess is it'll be, my prayer is that it will be in fall of 2027.
So
That would be good time.
so it's like
I would just answer your question.
15, 16
I would
months.
just answer your question. It's totally different to do OPM planning for something that has to align with the state and MSBA, jumping through all the MSBA hoops for a school versus not doing that. This is just a straight up feasibility. Can we build a building? What should it look like? Architect bangs it out and you have, but when the school does their design, we're not going to build two parking lots next to each other. It'll be an integrated, the timelines are integrated enough that each can take into account the others' design and electrical hookups and plumbing hookups. All of those synergies are important to do now, not let the school build their thing and then we'll get to it in 10 years or something. Nothing's gonna work together and you're gonna wind up having to go more vertical. It's gonna be it's gonna be way more expensive too.
Yeah, presumably, I guess you could wait if you knew that the school had no interest today on that property. Then there wouldn't be as much of a rush on this.
Yeah,
So,
Well, I just think
I mean,
it's not, honestly, maybe I want to build a house on that property. It doesn't matter who has interest in what. It's not theirs. It is not the school's property. It is the Parks and Recreation property, and they should have a plan, or they should have, according to the town bylaw, they're supposed to ask the select board to ask the permanent planning and building committee to do a feasibility study.
Okay,
And they didn't do that.
let's talk about that,
Haven't.
because I think there's a misunderstanding on that point, okay?
Okay.
I think, my understanding is that in 2018, the select board directed the permanent plan and building committee to begin a feasibility study, okay, for a future park and rec facility.
Great.
And the permanent plan and building initiated the process in 2018. They hired Abacus
Okay.
and they held public meetings.
Good.
The study was paused
Mhm.
for a number of reasons, which you haven't talked about, but
I don't know the
but I
reasons.
will.
Okay.
Well, it was paused because of the Dale Street Elementary School project.
Okay.
The people who, the chair of that committee was also the chair of the school building committee.
Okay.
Mike
That
Quinn.
doesn't sound okay.
And once we got accepted into the MSBA program, he had a lot on his plate, right?
Okay.
He had to be the chair of the school building committee, and
Mhm.
all of a sudden, priorities, he had to deal with priorities, right? So the school building.
More volunteers here. I
School
understand.
building was more important than the park and rec facility.
Okay.
So, so that was one thing. The other was COVID, and then the other is, if you remember that whole process of what the option that went to town meeting to get voted on in 2021
Mhm.
was a option that had Park and Rec using the Dale Street building as their permanent home.
Okay.
So if you're Park and Rec and you start a feasibility study and then you pause it for these reasons, it makes sense that why nothing got done with it, because they thought they had a place. Why build a building if I can use the Dale Street, right? So they waited for the vote. The vote failed.
We're gonna know. That was 5 years ago, though. And it's been 2 years since
Yeah.
it was structurally
Then
condemned
they,
and no
and
one's
then,
working
and
on
then
it.
they had a couple years where they had a director of the department that resigned, was indicted.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
Not good.
not a good situation. So all those reasons, we are where we are today. Okay, I'm not making excuses, but I'm trying to balance out the story. Okay.
No, I mean,
because
I think that was a good story. Actually, honestly, last annual meeting when we said, "Oh, this is a tough situation," the structural engineer said the report came in. The report came in November, and it came time for the warrants to be written. And by the warrants closed, and there was a temporary solution that was proposed that was voted on at last year's town meeting. So that was, I think, a reasonable, there's nothing anyone can do. Right? It was a tough situation.
Right.
But this is this year's town. It was a year later, and there's no new thing.
So let me ask you a question. Have you met with Park and Rec to find out what they've done?
Emailed Park and Rec twice, and they said to come to their regular meetings, which were scheduled after the deadline for this warrant submission.
But this is an
I
evolving
know it was
process.
involving.
You can
I did
still
meet,
reach out to them.
I did meet with the SBC. I did a nice Zoom with them and they had really great feedback and I think they're doing a great job. But I do think the Park and Rec is not supposed to be doing this in the first place. This is not their, it is supposed to be done by the PB.
So let's talk about that because Park and Rec is an elected board.
Mhm.
Commission is an elected.
Right.
Just like the select board, they
Yeah, I
sort of equal, right? In terms of they're both elected officials. The PB, the PBC is appointed by the select board.
Yeah.
Right. They have met with Park and Rec over the last 2 years. They've gone through a process with them where each step along the way, they've met with the select board, they met with Park and Rec. They've talked about the fact that they needed a temporary solution. They looked at modulars. All that was discussed with the permanent planning and building committee, Mike Quinn. And they have been, working with them. It's not like they've ignored them. They've been working together. They know there's a short-term and a long-term problem, right? And they're trying to figure out they've said it in front of the select board. They said there's a short-term need here, and then there's a longer-term need, which has been around for a long time. It's sort of the fifth wheel of the town. Nobody, we've got a long history of ignoring Park and Rec building, right? That's a fact. But the fact that in the last year and a half that they've done nothing, I don't think is appropriate characterization.
Really?
Yeah, I disagree with that. I think that they have. I mean, they've focused on this short-term solution. In the meantime, they're living out of like a temporary structure.
Do you think that the town believes that there's a plan for the FAF Center?
No,
I know, because there isn't.
that doesn't mean they've done nothing.
Okay, fine, they've done something. There is still no plan for the FAF Center years after it's been structurally condemned.
Okay, well, let's get it right though. Let's not say they've done nothing.
Well, they should be in charge. The town bylaw says explicitly, the Permanent Planning and Building Committee shall be in charge of all buildings that are not schools. They are not in charge.
And they were working with Park and Rec. They don't
In 2019?
they don't just go and run around doing stuff without other departments' cooperation. It has to be
That's what the bylaw
collaboration.
says. No, that's what the bylaw says. I'm going to pull it out. I have it. It says the Permanent
It
Planning. and
doesn't
Building-
say they will ignore other departments'
It
input.
says it, They haven't been empowered in the first place.
They have been empowered. The select board appointed them to
In
do.
2018.
Yeah,
And so here we are in 2026.
yeah.
And so now we're about to give the land away to this. Where's our plan?
So things move. Let's agree that things move painfully slowly in this town.
That's not an excuse.
Well, it may not be an excuse, but it's true. I'm sitting on the school building committee and God, I wish we passed that vote in 2021, but here I am. And we're gonna keep slogging through this. I also just want to say, nobody knows what form the new school is gonna take or where it's gonna be placed on the land. We know it's gonna be in that location at Dale because the voters made it super clear they didn't want it up in Wheelock. But I don't know if we're gonna use that
Well-
space for building this or not. No one knows. We're gonna get a range of options from, first we have to pick an architect. That's gonna be a slow process. Then the architect's gonna give us a range of options, which we'll have to mull over and then have a series of community meetings where people come in and give their input. Very slow. You're nodding your head like, oh God, Judge Michelson talking about how slow it is, but it really is a slow, deliberate process.
But
And it's just gotta play out.
I know, but you've already had meetings where you said you're gonna design on top of that land. So of course, those are gonna be the options.
No, I think
I've
we
watched
said
the
we're
meetings.
going to consider that among a range of
Yeah,
options.
so of course, those are gonna be the best options because it's gonna look much better when it uses twice as much land.
I don't,
Let me,
neither you nor
let
I
me-
know that.
let me ask you, I have a long list of questions here, but in your petition, you talked about that voters have clearly communicated a desire for a fact-based community center. And I'm just curious, how do you reconcile, I know you probably haven't seen it, but in the survey,
I have not seen the
in
survey.
the survey they just did,
They don't like it.
they asked the question, and 25% said they prefer FAF,
Okay,
45% prefer other sites,
okay, great.
and 30% are unsure. So how are you so sure?
How am I so sure? Well,
You say it's clearly
It was
communicated.
clearly
What's your
communicated.
evidence?
I just ran through like a decade of please go do's from the
A
voters.
700 person survey.
The 700-person survey says is that we should go do.
It's not clear where the location should be based on that survey.
In previous meetings this year, the town has said we don't even know where we can build up in up by the Hospital Hill. The town came up and protested, line out the door, saying we don't want to build.
When you say the town, it wasn't 700 people.
Okay,
It might have been 20, 25. This is an opinion of 700 people.
you can, listen, if you're gonna, this is clearly delivered minutes before I show up. You have written notes about all the steps that have been taken on how this has not been delayed. But in real life, this FAP center has sat there for 18 months after being structurally condemned. We have our kids out of UCC on a rolling lease, and we're going to put trailers at Hinckley. And you're telling me I haven't done the research?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm asking you, how did you reach your conclusions?
I reached my conclusions based on the decade of people saying,
Okay.
please build. And fine, if you want to amend it, and we can amend it on the floor and say, let's put $200,000 to figure out where we should do a community center. But I do think the voters should have more than one option, which is a school that they're going to have to review by the time they get to choose what school plan they want to go after.
So why should the town meeting override a survey
A survey,
that uses data to evaluate options?
because we have a
of 700
beautiful piece of land in the center of our town that the body in charge of taking care of it has not done that.
Okay,
I mean, and they show up with a piece of paper, a survey saying they don't even have to do it. This is a get out of jail free.
Okay.
We don't even have to do it.
they don't have to do what?
Do I ever come up with a plan for FAP now?
That's not
that
what
survey
they've
is.
saame that's not what the survey
I haven't
says.
read it. It's because it was delivered.
It's a factual survey. That's the results of the survey, okay?
I don't know if you saw the select board meeting in January,
Mhm.
but they talk about the
I
money
saw the
that
select board meeting in
they
January.
talked about the survey then. They also talked about that the money they have, they can allocate towards a feasibility study, which I think you mentioned in your petition.
Yeah.
So
So why haven't they?
they're working on it.
No, they're not. They're not working on it.
You haven't met with them.
Unbelievable. All right.
I mean, the other thing is, I think, the school building committee just put in their newsletter that the FAF center will only be considered if Park and Rec declines the use of it.
They're proposing to use
And
building.
survey shows, I'm just telling you, this is what the school building committee put out in their newsletter. They're looking at it as if we're only gonna do something with that land if Park and Rec.
They want to
says
stay as
they don't.
far away from this train wreck as possible.
Okay, well, I'm just telling you, that's what
That's
they
a very
put out
smart,
public.
that's a very
That's
smart
what
thing
they-
for them to do.
That's what the committee's put
We
out.
love train.
The body in charge of coming up with a plan for FAP is proposing something completely across town at Hinckley. Does that give you any indication as to the likelihood that there's going to be a plan?
They haven't proposed anything.
That there is a warrant for them to do something at Hinckley. What are you talking about?
It's temporary.
That's not the community center.
I know, there's not going to be a community center. That's the point. It's going to get put as part, it's going to be the parking lot of the Dale Street School.
Okay, let's talk
We don't
about
know
that. They have money to complete the feasibility study.
Since 2018.
Yes.
I know, agreed.
I mean, we've talked about.
But they're not in charge of that feasibility study anymore, based on the updated bylaws in 2022. They're not supposed to be doing feasibility studies. The town passed a bylaw saying, don't do that. did.
They're gonna be working with the permanent plan and building
It
committee.
doesn't matter.
They've already been
Doesn't matter.
authorized to work with the permanent.
A
plan.
decade ago, and they haven't
So
done it.
they haven't spent the money. It hasn't been completed.
It hasn't even
It's been paused,
for the last 5
and they're
years.
gonna finish it, is what they.
And the reason why the way this is even done is because I've been pushing on this. There was no plan for this until I started pushing on this. Until my warrant was done, this was never gonna happen. And also, none of this.
I don't know that. I don't know. I will ask them when they come in.
You should ask them, why do we not
You're
have a
making
plan?
an accusation. I don't know if it's true.
It just so happens to be delivered the day
So Pete,
I'm presenting here.
just to be totally fair, I got an
Do you think
email.
I'm being unfair?
Yeah, I do, really do, yeah, because I got an email on February 20. Just hear me out, 2 seconds. I got an email on February 23rd saying the survey is active. Please take it, take 5-7 minutes. I took it then. I got an email last Friday saying today is the last day for the survey.
I saw that.
We got it today. They probably didn't pull it together over the weekend. Okay, they've had 36 hours to finalize this. And you're upset that you just got it? I just got it too.
I know.
We're not like hiding the ball here.
Okay.
I think that's an accusation that's not.
It's not an accusation that is accurate. This is dated yesterday.
Okay, and if you had come in 2 weeks from now, that would have been a lot better.
Let's call it happenstance. It just so happens. Just
Yeah.
so happens.
Yeah, it just so happens.
Well, it doesn't seem like you guys are in favor of this type of thing. I think that's really disappointing. You know,
Well,
you've kind of been very combative.
No, we're not gonna vote on
I
it
know, but
today.
this has not really been a very
Well,
great idea, Pete. Glad you came up with all the ideas on how to push this forward. It doesn't seem that way, honestly.
I think that, if you want my personal opinion, I think that your proposal is not aligned with stakeholders. Their readiness, okay, I think that it sort of conflicts with
I
ongoing
agree.
park and rec planning.
I agree with
Okay,
you.
it-
It's not aligned with Park and Rec, but they're not the stakeholder.
Well, they're elected officials.
No, but the permanent planning, the bylaw says that the other body is supposed to do it. And we're ignoring that.
They're not in isolation, okay? They don't do anything in isolation. They work with the town departments. And then, and I think you left out some reasons for the delays that, for the last 5 or 6 years. I just
I
wanted to
should
make,
have put in more reasons why there was 5 or 6 years of delay.
I think could have been more balanced,
Okay.
yeah. So I think your request for funding, maybe we could talk about that. I think that's unnecessary.
Okay, good. Yeah, the money probably exists.
I think the money is there already.
I agree with you. It's
It-
even-
It's not in the revolving fund. It's actually held, it's separate outside the revolving fund. This is money that was never spent that the town put in an account, okay?
Good.
So, and we just got the survey, so we have to consider that, okay? But, we're not gonna vote on this today, but I just wanted to, get answers to my questions.
Okay.
'cause
Do you have any
I
more
don't-
questions? I don't know.
Yeah, I do,
haven't had
I
a
do.
chance to answer many of them.
So, the Council on Aging,
Mhm.
did you reach out to them?
I didn't reach out to the Council on Aging, no.
Okay, so they, as far as I know, they haven't requested to relocate.
No, they're not gonna relocate. That's not the intent is for them to relocate. The intent is for them to have additional space.
And,
So,
and have they said they need it?
listen, if they don't want the space, then we can have more space for the kids at the FAP Center, which is designed for Parks and Rec. If they don't want to be involved, then they can choose not to be involved. The design, that's what the design will decide. That's the feasibility part. What should we do with the space that has been sitting decrepit in our town for the last 2 years?
Yeah.
That's what that's been budgeted for 7 years.
Yeah,
That's what the feasibility study is about.
and when it comes down to the PVEC, you seem to mention that they've been excluded from the process, right?
They're supposed to be the ringleader.
And they have been engaged.
I'm not talking about engaged.
And so what's preventing them from participating in the process,
What's preventing them
in your opinion?
is the way the bylaw is written, is the Park and Recreation, after 2022, the town passed it, the Parks and Recreation is supposed to request help from the select board for a feasibility study for their needs. They did not do that. What they instead did was they said, we already received approval from the voters in 2018 to do a feasibility study. We don't need to ask for request. We have prior authorization in 2018. So
just a point of clarification, which I think will settle some of this. The update to the bylaw in 2022 was just adding in the new school committee bylaw. The actual bylaw asking the permanent planning and building committee to do this was in 2018. And that's when Parks and Recreation and the select board had permanent planning and building committee take this project over in 2018. That's how you ended up with Alex. 2022 change was just adding in.
That was just at the school, the school building committee.
Yeah.
Have you had any discussions with the select board?
yeah, I emailed them, all three of them.
Like an in-person discussion?
I
Did they
asked for
reply
their
to your
feedback
email?
and they provided two of them provided feedback.
2 select board members
Yeah.
provided you feedback,
Yeah.
okay. And what was their direction?
One was like, this is awesome. And one said, you know, I think you should talk to the Parks and Recreation Committee,
Okay. Which you haven't done yet,
which I've not done.
okay.
Instead, I have their input right here. It's not my
Well,
job. It's not my job to talk to the Parks and Recreation. I'm a citizen, right? They're the ones with 8 years of no plan, not me. It's not my job
Well,
to go running around collaborating with the different organizations.
I don't want to debate what your job is. You've submitted a citizen.
I tried
petition,
very hard to
to
move
us.
this forward, yes.
Okay, and we have to make an evaluation and recommendation
Well,
to town meeting.
The,
So
the validity
if
of
you
what I
haven't talked
proposed-
to all these parties, that factors into our decision.
I've talked to the select board, I've talked to the town council on Christmas Eve. I talked to everybody but Park and Recreation because they did not want to meet with me and said, join our regular meeting, which happened to be after all this stuff was due. I'm sorry. And then they canceled the meeting and then they finally had one a month ago that I was able to attend, which I didn't go to. But my contribution is not supposed to be to go to a meeting, sit in the audience and say, hey, you guys really should consider it. It's not.
No, but if you bring a proposal forward to spend money and direct, committees, then we have it's a fair question to ask. How have you considered the
That's
input of other committees?
It seems self-evident that a plan to do something with the FAP Center does not need me to propose it. That should not require me to go to their meeting to say, hey, you guys really ought to consider a plan to come up with the replacement for the FAP Center.
Yeah.
So the absence of that does not somehow make this ill-timed or somehow off agenda. We have a building that's sitting there decrepit that we're storing material in.
Right. I mean, it seems to me that the core issue here is not lack of alignment. I mean, the core issue is lack of alignment. Excuse me. It's not lack of study. We don't have all the parties, the stakeholders aligned. Okay. It's not that we haven't studied it. We've done multiple studies. We don't have alignment. So at any rate,
I don't even have to be involved in a plan, but I would hope that there is a plan. They don't have to include me. I don't need to be aligned in anything. The Parks and Recreation Committee and or the Permanent Planning and Building Committee should come up with a plan to go do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need a survey to say we should come up with a plan to fix the FAP Center. I don't think. We should do a feasibility study, which has been budgeted, allocated, and hasn't been done in 8 years.
I mean, we have a process. If you don't like what elected officials are doing, like the park and rec people, if you don't like the way they're managing the department or making decisions or moving things forward,
You can do a citizen petition, which is what I did.
or you can run for park.
I don't want to run for Park and Recreation Committee. I want the town.
You want to run for select board?
No, I want the town. This has nothing to do with select board. I want the town to vote to say, please go do this plan in time for the ability to have a synergy with the Dale Street School. It's really a very simple proposal.
But I mean, what I heard that they're going to do with the school building committee is work in tandem with them.
No, they're not.
Well,
You just said, you quoted, they want nothing to do with this project.
I didn't say that.
The school committee, the school
Don't
building.
put words
committee-
in my mouth. I didn't
No,
say
well,
that.
you read out the thing that says, we will wait to see what happens and recommended by the Park and
The
Recreation.
Park and Rec is moving forward with their feasibility study. They're doing
Where?
a fiscal, they just hired somebody. Who did they hire in February?
They saw a proposal from Hunden Associates.
Hunden
but
Associates.
Based on the cost, they're gonna go out and do a full.
And so they're starting with programming and revenue associated with that programming before they jump into a feasibility study. Because they want to know what can they afford? How big of a building can they support?
Okay.
All right, then they're going to do a feasibility study. That's their plan. That's what we'll hear from them, I assume. But they're going to do that in combination with the school building committee over the next year. And as they make, then they're going to look at sites, they're going to do all that stuff. And as they make decisions, they'll let the school building committee know, yeah, either we want the FAF land or no, we don't want it. And then the school building committee will either, they'll either delete a scenario or they'll consider a scenario.
Yeah, I disagree with you. It's not really up to the Parks and Recreation Committee to come up with a plan for FAFSA. It's not. That's not their job. It is,
Now, you think it's the permanent plan and building?
yes,
committee.
as per the town bylaws.
What does it say in the?
Let's read it.
I don't know, let's, do we have the bylaws? What
It
does
says it very, very clearly.
Yeah, let's read it.
I'm not losing my mind.
It says that they don't have to talk to any other department or get input from any other
They
department.
should do their
It
job.
says that in the bylaw?
No, the Permanent Planning and Building Committee could do however they want. I don't have a point. I don't have a,
Is that the best way to move forward, not collaborating with anyone?
I'm not talking, it has nothing to do with, I'm not telling them how to do their job. They are empowered to do it the way that they're supposed to do it. It has nothing to do with it.
All right, well,
That's what's going through my mind is the select board seems perfectly capable of asserting itself to assert its jurisdiction over things if it wants to.
Right.
And if it wanted to say, no, damn it.
I
we-
completely
we
agree with you.
want planning and building
I
committee to
completely
do
agree with
this, not Park and Rec, they would say so.
It says it in the bylaws.
They, our current select board, would stamp pound on the table and stamp their feet and say so. And they're not, they seem to be going along with the project as it's
I found
going
it.
along now.
Any user department seeking to construct, reconstruct, alter, enlarge a building under its jurisdiction shall file a project application with the select board. They did not do.
go, time out.
What?
Okay, they have met with the select.
I didn't
board.
say me.
Huh?
They're supposed to file a project application for the replacement of the FAF Center, which they did not do.
They did something in 2018.
No, that's not that.
That ain't
That's not this.
It's a replacement for the FAF Center. What they did in
I don't know.
2018,
I don't-
they did it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, they did. It shall refer to the applicant, the select board shall refer the application to the select board committee, or in the case of a school, they should do it to the school building committee. So it should be referred to this permanent planning and building committee where they can do all the stakeholder alignment. It's not my job to align with everybody's stakeholders. The town bylaw says they should.
Does it say that they shouldn't collaborate with the department?
Well, of course they should. I'm not saying they shouldn't.
Okay, you agree with that? Okay,
Of
good.
course.
Why don't we end on that then? And unless there's other questions, we've taken up a lot of time on this one article. So, all right, we may have more questions.
I'll do my best to
we'll reach
answer
out
them.
to you. But thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. All right. Is it Tom Harrington? Yes. Bob Reckner and Tom Harrington. Why don't you guys come on up? And so if you could just introduce yourself to the committee and then we'll start. You know, this is the Castle Hill sewer system that we're going to talk about. Huh? And and this is our resident expert on this topic.
Let's not go that far. I don't even know the job.
Be modest.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the, my name is Tom Harrington. I'm an attorney with Harrington Heat with offices in Wellesley, Massachusetts, and I'm here representing the Castle Hill Sewer Association.
And I'm Bob Reckner. I live at 275 North Street. I was incorrect. You asked me how long I'd been in town, or I was telling you how long I'd been in town earlier in the elevator. I told you 40 years. I think it's more like 50.
Wow.
So,
It beat this guy over here.
but in any case, I've run the physical plant along with the assistance of other people in our building. That is located at Farm Street and West Street, serves 24 homes, many along all the homes along Deerfield Drive, and then along North Street, heading down towards Farm Street on the easterly side of North Street. And so I've had the privilege of knowing what's there since 1986.
Great, excellent. Okay, so how do you want to introduce this article? Do you want them to talk about it and the overview and then?
Yeah, I mean, I could also just give you the quick down and dirty, and you all can correct me where I got it wrong. Because I have done a lot of reading on this. So, sewer infrastructure generally lags suburban development in many Massachusetts towns. So private sewer associations were very common in the 1950s to about the 1980s. And developers or neighborhood associations would install pump stations and force mains, connect to a municipal sewer line or treatment facility, and then they would maintain the system privately. And it allowed subdivisions to be built even when the town was either unwilling or unable to extend public sewer service. And Castle Hill is one of these legacy private systems owned by this association, this group. They've got a force main, a pump station, there's some easements. And for those that don't know, a force main, it's a pressurized pipe that carries wastewater from a pump station, typically uphill or over a long distance, so it reaches a gravity sewer system and goes in. So it literally is force pumping it all out. Maintenance, homeowners typically fund electricity, pump maintenance, repairs, replacement reserves. But as the infrastructure ages, replacement costs can be extremely high. And municipal takeovers typically arise for a number of reasons. One of them is that force mains typically have a 30 to 50-year life. When they approach failure, repairs can become expensive, environmental risk increases. A failing force main can cause sewage spills, groundwater contamination. There's also governance issues, and it's also once you get to the point where a municipality has a sewer system, system integrating a private system can improve reliability, standardize maintenance, allow capital planning through sewer enterprise funds. Basically here, then went back through a series of, years here. There was some minutes from the Board of Water and Sewerage. Back in 2018, the town lawyer gave an opinion that it would be appropriate for Medfield to accept ownership of the pumping station and the force main system contingent upon an inspection of the equipment, provision for correction of functional deficiencies, with the idea that costs for any required remediation would be paid by the Castle Hill folks. They would get an engineering inspection done, identify the issues, fix them, and then after the upgrades are completed, the transfer is then made to the town to avoid the town inheriting a large deferred maintenance liability. And basically what I understand here is that as of now, more or less, all of the homeowners have agreed to fund what is necessary to bring it up to code in order for the town to take over the private system, with this being almost like in legal parlance, a sign and close. We're willing to sign on it, but we're not actually willing to spend the money until the town votes to agree to take it. But assuming the town agrees to take it at town meeting, then these folks would go out, spend the money, bring it up to code, exactly what needs to happen, and then it would be transferred over to the town of Medfield. The only other kind of like real issue that I think I saw was there was one that was, if sewer infrastructure in Massachusetts, if sewer infrastructure is located within a public right of way, municipalities have responsibility for excavating roadway damage, public safety and emergency response, even if a pipe is privately owned. So right now the town is in a bit of a hybrid situation, an awkward situation where ownership and operational responsibility diverges, but if there was ever any sort of emergency issue, it's on the town to respond. And so, the town may have to close the road, excavate, coordinate repair, even if the association technically owns the pipe, and it creates risk for the town without control of the assets. So it makes a whole lot of sense to just transfer the private sewage system to the town. At the same time, here in 2026, we've got financial budgetary issues. The town doesn't want to take this on, doesn't want to assume ownership without upgrades, because then those costs would shift to all sewer ratepayers and not just the association. But as far as I understand, the association's willing and standing ready to take care of that. We just have to have the town vote of town meeting that, assuming that happens, they'll take it into the system. So,
You better have the, yeah, those. That's good.
What would happen if the association can't afford all of the repair? Back and it's a $200,000 number, and does the association have the wherewithal to make those repairs, or it's just null and void, can still, do anything?
So I think that's what comes back to when I was reviewing old minutes. There was one thing from the 2018 meeting that mentioned the cost of upgrades, between pump station rehabilitation could easily run on 2018 dollars, $500,000 plus. Homeowner disagreement between splitting the capital costs between the homeowners, and then uncertainty about the infrastructure. Not saying this is what happened here, but one thing in my research, associations sometimes delay inspections to avoid discovering additional expensive problems. But so the past minutes suggest, there may have been a combination of all of that. But at the same time, when I was talking with Brittany and Christine earlier about this, it sounds like the engineering inspection has already been done. Punch list has already been pulled together. We've already gotten quotes for exactly what it's going to cost. The 24 homeowners within the association have said, yes, we are prepared to fund this right now. With the one caveat being, we want the town to take it. We'll fix it before we give it to you. But we want the town to take it. I think that's it.
We're just about there. So you did a great job. Like I said, better than I could have done.
Yeah.
Where we are is, you're correct. We're looking for the town to support this and be willing to take it over. At which point we would have the responsibility to replace the pumps. We just replaced the generator. We had a fire. And that's already been done. We've scoped the pipes along Deerfield Drive, and they look incredibly clean. We have not scoped all the pipes. We're willing to do what we need to do to pay to put this into condition for the town to take it and be satisfied with that.
What's the estimate of that?
Our estimate now is, I think we're looking at closer to probably $250,000 or so if we do it. If
Split between all the.
Oh yeah, we would divide this amongst all the homeowners, which would be less than anybody putting in a septic system or replacing.
Yeah.
We do not have total agreement on that because we're waiting to find out if the town will accept it in that condition. And we have already informed all of our members that this is the direction that we are headed in, and that we are looking forward to town meeting being successful for this, and that we will start to look for the funding from them.
So the order of the order of events is that the article at town meeting will be to accept this.
It'll be to authorize the Board of Water and Sewer to take this on. And actually, we have the Board of Water and
To
Sewer.
take it on,
Yeah.
is any conditions?
Yes, contingent upon it being brought up to the standards of the Board of Water and Sewer.
So that, so then they have to spend the money.
Yes, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
okay,
we won't take it over.
Okay, I just
Can
wanted,
I just walk you through 2 seconds, walk you
Yeah.
through because I did the first draft of the warrant article, sent it to Mark Sorrell, and he did a lot of tune-ups to it, which I think build in a lot of nice protections for the town. But so just so you understand the order of operations, so the article authorizes the Medfield Board of Water and Sewage to acquire by gift or eminent domain. And we think it'll likely be eminent domain, but the requirement is that all damages are waived, because when the town acquires something by eminent domain, it's required to pay damages. We must waive all damages. So you're gonna need something signed by all our members saying you get damages, so it's a zero cost. What they're acquiring is the gravity main, force main, pump station, any lift stations, and all appurtenance thereto necessary to transmit sanitary sewage from Deerfield along North Street and Farm Street to Blacksmith Drive, where the sewer line connects to the town's municipal sewer system, together with any and all rights. And that was the any and all rights piece is what Mr. Hunt was referring to with going under public, it's our pipe, but it's under your road. So we want to make sure that we give you clean title there. So we're guaranteeing you get everything you need. And I think the end part is the real protection. Provided that the pump station mains and other infrastructure have been repaired and or replaced and or are otherwise in good working order and will not require town or board to incur substantial expense for upgrade
Yeah.
as determined by said water and sewage,
okay,
or do anything else there too.
Yeah.
So I think we're comfortable with this, but I think they put us in a nice box so that they don't need to do anything until they're satisfied that we've met all our.
Yeah. Okay,
And I would add, I think this offers a protection to the town, a proper one. I believe we're the only private schools to run force main now in the town. You don't really want me running
Thinking of Bob running it is what keeps me up at night.
this. So we hope you will look on our petition favorably.
and water and sewer supports this, right?
Board of Water and Sewerage has agreed to sponsor the article, it's
Yeah.
not a citizen's petition.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they have been working closely with them for a very long time to get this to this point.
Okay,
When the
good.
generator was replaced, Mo signed off on it.
We asked him
Yeah.
kind of what kind of pump you want out there.
Okay. Ed, you had a question?
What's the incremental cost to the town after this is all done? I know it's gonna be divided among all the ratepayers in town, but what would be that, there's gonna be some cost of absorbing this?
I'm not saying there isn't, but I don't know that I would
Would
tell you what that.
be operational expenses of what, electricity,
It's just
propane in case we lose power, and maintenance. By the way, just speaking of maintenance, because you talked about that a little bit. The generator and the twin redundant pumps that operate this system have been under service contracts with the original people that started in 1986 since day one, and they have been maintained and are visited during the year. So you may have experiences where people don't. Wind River comes in and pumps out. We have a holding tank. They come in and they do it every year. And APC is in there making sure the mice stay happy.
So the broader public safety issue here is if there is a failure,
That's the big.
if there's a failure, the town's gotta deal with it anyway.
Private sewer.
Cause you can't have,
Yeah.
it feeds into the main system.
Right, the private sewer located in the public way. The town is responsible for failures or accidents. So
Yeah.
there's a risk to the town.
Yeah.
Right now anyways.
Right, exactly. But this seems like a reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many years you working on this solution?
With me since
The-
2019.
I think we started in the 1900s.
And we don't let developers do this anymore, right?
We would not let anybody.
Any other questions for these fine gentlemen?
Thank you.
Thank you both. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I'm sorry. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jones, for passing all.
I'm ready, I'm ready to talk
I
about
know.
filtration and inflow later too. Mo will be proud when we meet
Next 5 years.
I think everybody, well, maybe the new members don't know, this is Deb Barrow. John Woodhull.
Yeah.
From the Conservation Commission.
A hardworking group.
Based upon the materials you gave us, yes, you're a hardworking group.
Well, I'm really sorry about that, but we have received a lot of information last minute, and I just want to thank you so much for taking your time, and just really thank you for all the work that you're doing as we start out. And I want to, so John's here to answer if you have technical engineering type questions, and I'm here to give you.
I'm just here to sit here. She's
I'm going to give you the overview, and we'll see how we can give you information best. But I also want to thank Ashley, who's been really helpful for guiding us. And Keith, thank you too, because we met with them today. And I want to say that the conversation was really important and helpful, because what it did is inform us in a way that with detail about the financial challenges that you're all facing, and trying to make a budget that's going to work for everybody's best interest. And in light of that conversation, I know that, our thought was to take some of the information. We'd like to work tonight collaboratively and have a conversation and try to figure out what works best for our two warrant articles. And one is the $50,000 request for dam safety tree removal work. And the other is a $5,000 request for the Conservation Trust Fund, which is intended actually for dam safety inspection work. But given the new information, or just the detail, the illumination of the situation and information we've received recently from our engineering, we think the collaboration would be really helpful. And to the extent that that might lead to, a suggestion that we would withdraw the article for this year, that would require a vote by the full commission, which would be on March 19th.
March 19th.
Which would be next Thursday.
Okay.
So I just want to preface our conversation and your questions with that. I did submit something. I don't know if you had a chance to read it, not all 345 pages of exhibits, but there were about 6 pages that just gave you a brief sort of chronology, identified what we've done and the information that we've recently received, and sort of brought to our attention, again, really within the last month or so, some of the the pieces that make this more complicated than we had anticipated. And that would be, we thought originally when we started this that there were about 10 or 12 trees, and they were all located on town property. And it turns out that after we had the preliminary engineering information back, that there are 36 trees, and about 15 of those are located on abutters' properties. So it necessitates involvement of people outside of the town. Additionally, the access route was anticipated to be over just town-owned property at the dam for the Danielson Pond Dam issue. And it turns out actually that the more cost-effective, safer, and more efficient route would be through abutters' proproperties.
You could say vastly more.
Vastly more. We have reached out.
What kind of approvals do you have to get from the butters to do that?
So I talked to Mark Sorrell about that as a preliminary matter, and we would need a number of different approvals. There was, sort of informal feedback that the abutters had, were open to this, and we confirmed that with a letter that was sent. I sent you a copy of that, but it was a letter that was sent with a lot of detail. I think it's in your 345 pages, but it was sent with a lot of detail, identifying all of these issues. The fact that they have trees on their property, that those trees are in what we call like the removal zone, which is identified by the dam safety, licensed engineers and according to state regulations, and that they would have to be removed for the tree removal work. That the better access route is through their property. So there's a lot of detail in terms of how these issues are complicated and interrelated. And we had 2 preliminary emails feedback back saying that they they were open to having equipment, go through their property, be staged on their property or accessed on it and having their trees removed. But that again is without any legal documentation, which would require a right of entry just to go on their property to do further site investigation to see if there's additional permitting that would be required. It would be, then it would be more development of plans, which would indicate what type of equipment would traverse their property or be stationed on their property. We have an idea that the work would take about a week to complete. There's some costs associated with that, with the increased number of trees.
Just to back up a little bit, because we do have a couple new
So sorry.
members on the committee that didn't hear some of the history
Okay.
that you came forward with last year. So if you could maybe just summarize that a little bit.
Even I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Deb and I have been working,
Right.
and John, over the past year to figure
Right.
out what to do about the dam. In 2018, we received a consent decree that said that what level of kind of issues it had, and we had a kind of higher level of issues that have to be taken care of.
It's classified as a significant hazard dam, which then triggers a number of sort of consequences, which include those regular periodic inspections, at least 2 inspections a year, and then a recommended list of actions, including removal.
It's really more accurate to say we were supposed to have made the repairs,
Just under consent.
and that having not made the repairs, we then have to continue to do inspections until we can make the repairs.
So Conservation Commission since 2018 has been evaluating how to move forward on this. One of the ideas is to take those trees down, but there's many other options that are worth exploring, which that's why Conservation Commission is kind of potentially going back to explore those other options, including, taking care of the dam itself, that it would no longer exist, or draining the water from the pond, to get a better direction of what's the ultimate goal and how can we save the town money long term, because we can't keep investing money on a Band-Aid. So that's kind of where we are today.
And I'd like to just add to that I think what precipitated the recent activity was the tree fell, a very 100-foot tall, broad-based pine tree did fall at the dam in January, late December, early January 2024. And when it fell, it didn't split from halfway, but it just fell, and the root ball came out, which was 8 to 10 feet in diameter, and that of course seriously compromises the earth and berm plantings. And then there are just those number of trees all along that earth and berm, and some of them are dead, but they're still standing, but they're all very stately old pines. And the danger was, what happens? And in order to address that tree fall, any work that was done, which work was required reporting again to the Office of Dam Safety in Massachusetts. So in 2024, they knew that we had an emergency repair and a significant issue that required permitted work at the site.
And it's actually worse than just the trees falling over. If the trees don't fall over, their root systems tend to create channels that then you can start a leakage.
Yeah. So we've kind of last year we authorized some money, and you found out that wasn't enough.
That's what it comes down
Basically,
to.
and so you come back again, and in this process, through discussions with Pete and Ashley, maybe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you maybe discovered that there's a lot of other, there's some unanswered questions or potential solutions that maybe you might need more time to explore.
Yeah, the original Power Engineering provided us with 3 options, and in each of those options, you would need to remove all the trees.
Yeah.
The question is, are there other options where you would not need to?
Yeah.
And so, does it make sense to remove the trees if you end up not needing to?
If you don't need to,
We
spend the money.
Yeah.
Is there another option, I guess? And so that's what's causing some pause, I guess.
That's piece of it. I mean, we suspect that the trees would need to be removed.
It's
all
very
instances. It's very, John thinks very likely, and he's the engineer, but there is a possibility. But that question would have to go back to PAR. So there would have to be money spent to go back to the consultant that we've been using to investigate these sort of open sort of pieces that really have come up in the last
Yeah.
few weeks. There is money left from the $50,000 that, so when we started, I think I put a breakdown in the paperwork I gave you, but we requested $50,000 last year. And we committed by contract to do the data collection work that was completed this fall and early December that gave us a lot of this information. And that was 24,900. Now, of that, we have data collection and drawings, which we received, and the balance of that, which I think is 13,000 of the 24,009, was allocated for permitting. We have not started the permitting yet. So we don't know what part we do in case we ask for, a change order type of amendment to the contract. On the other hand, if we have to go forward with the permitting typically is good for 3 years. So
3 years.
it's
So if we were to do the trees within 3 years, it would still.
Yeah.
We would be
I
all
mean, is
set.
there a cost to going through and getting all these approved property owner approvals?
We think that would be done really with town council, because town council will be drafting on behalf of the town, and the property owners would then.
How many are there? Oh, there's only two.
Two.
Okay.
And they would consult with their own attorneys. And
When you say there's only two, you mean there's only two who are trees?
correct, if there were only.
Yeah, I have
More
two.
like six or seven.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are two with trees, and it's really one of the two that the access would be required for us to.
And have you had preliminary conversations with
Yes.
them?
Yes,
They're
and they're on board.
on
Well,
board.
yeah.
Okay.
They're very.
They've been notified,
Yeah.
we're gonna say they've been notified with a lot of detail that would give them reason to know. But they should consult with family members and with attorneys. There's not certain of everybody's family situation. And there was a lot of detail. And they should consult
Yeah,
with
that's
an
good.
expert. And the town would want them to consult with
Yeah.
someone and not
Their
just,
preliminary reaction was positive.
Right.
How about
and that's how we're gonna say.
We also discussed that should the state show up tomorrow and say, what's going on here? You can show that you've been doing work in good faith, right? And
Right.
that we are also evaluating all options on the table to figure the ultimate best path forward, which
We've been-
requires.
Right, and Concom really has only been actively involved in managing this property since 2024 when the tree fell. So anything that went on before that, I'm not exactly sure who decision makers were or how that the decisions to fund that were made. But Concom's active involvement has been since 2024 when the trees fell. So yes, we feel very confident that the documents, we've worked hard to document everything that we've done and to be consistent in efforts so
Yeah.
that at least if the state were to come in.
But you're kind of just managing it at this point.
Yeah.
There's no real long-term solution here that's been decided.
That's been identified or decided, no.
You mentioned like 3 scenarios, all of which require the trees coming down.
Yeah,
Can you just give us a quick, what are those 3
They're
scenarios?
basically, it's, repairing the dam so that changing the design of the dam as well as repairing it so that it's structurally stable, but also so that it's totally passive, that it just overflows automatically. Whereas now if the dam as it is now, there's stop logs that you can remove, and it requires active management in case of a large storm or a flood in order for it to be safe. There's the options that all of the options actually that were looked at would be totally passive in that case, not requiring any active management. So there's one option that there's basically 2 types of make the dam taller and passive. And then there's a third, which is remove the dam.
Altogether.
And the state,
But the first step in removing is removing the trees and then.
Sure.
but the state will not finance they're not giving out money, grants.
They give out
to-
far more grants for removal than they do for repair.
For repair.
It's not that they give out none, but it's far easier to get money.
So the cost of those first 2 options, is that a repair? Is that considered a repair?
It's considered repair, yes.
And removal cost, you estimate to be.
The removal costs the way they were estimated by the engineer, the same as the repair costs. That was,
But keep in mind that
The
those,
removal cost drains it, so there is no more pond.
yes.
it's actually more complicated than just draining it because there's a lot of permitting that goes on. It's restoring it to
It's
certain riverine functions.
riverine function. There's a lot that has to happen.
Right.
The other thing that ends up being important is that you've accumulated a lot of sediment behind the dam. And there's a good chance that that sediment is going to be contaminated and that they're not going to want to just have that get swept down the river into the channels. And so if we then have to remove that sediment and do something with it, then that's a lot of cost.
It's complicated.
I can imagine, yeah.
Mhm.
And and the debate here, as we talked last year, is that, we have a group of homeowners, was it 5 or 7, that live around the pond, that like to have a pond view. And the cost of doing these auctions is pretty significant. So who bears that cost is kind of that's why this is dragged on so long, because there's a disagreement on who should pay for it.
And there was the hope that the state would fund it.
Yeah.
And it was applied for each year, but each year it's been rejected. So.
Was applied for a couple of years, but the estimates are dating back to 2021. So, and the estimates for the work did not include using DPW to do any of the work. And so the estimates aren't really good estimates. The data is not really available to use at this point in time.
And again, that's a little bit weird because, when you use DPW to do work, it means they're not doing something else.
Right.
So it's not,
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you want to, move forward on this? Do you want to talk to your committee and then let us know?
What are your concerns for us so that we can bring those back?
I mean, my personal, I'll let other people talk, but my personal concern is that that we keep spending money on it, right?
Right.
And that we don't make the hard decision.
Yes.
And I don't know how we force that hard decision, but I don't know if that's your role either, but you charge with care, custody, and control of the property. So I don't know if that's a role you think you can play to sort of get people to agree on a solution here.
I think what we've looked at it ultimately is that whatever the long-term solution is, it's going to end up going to town meeting ultimately through your committee, because it's going to be a sum of money that the people in town need to vote on.
Right.
And that, to be fair to everybody involved in the process, we have maybe 6 really, really, really invested people around the pond, and then other people who appreciate for its aesthetic value and its historic value.
There are people who fish in it.
Right. There's a conversation that we should try to invite the community in to have, so that everybody has all of the information and understands everything they can about the pond. We did our pond assessments, which you gave us money for, and that was really helpful in giving us more definition about the nature and type of this pond and the lifespan of this pond, because it will become increasingly shallow over time, and we're not talking hundreds of years, and the vegetation has already started to move in, and so
the rate of filling in is likely to actually increase with time, if anything, because of the vegetation starting to move in.
Right. And that's without doing anything.
Unless we do something to reverse that, which it would be from an engineering perspective as possible as well. You could excavate the dam. It's just that's very expensive.
And you have the sediment issue if there are any contaminants in it. Which
I mean, I don't think it's a secret. We have very large capital needs as a town. And I'm not sure where this on a priority would fall, but clearly it's not going to be ahead of some of the big.
I think there's no question at all.
Yeah.
So do you have other items that we can put on our list to bring to the commission for?
No, I think
Peter?
So what we spoke about this morning, which is sort of the blunt approach that I proposed, is let's drain the pond. I think the Office of Dam Safety is proposing that ponds be eliminated, and I think they would be.
You mean they're proposing dams be eliminated, not ponds?
Yes,
Yeah.
well,
Yes.
the ponds will go if the dams go, but yes. And I think they'd be fine with it. Now, can I say that to an absolute certainty? No, I obviously can't say that to an absolute certainty, but that's the approach I would favor taking. And so I think the idea of taking this item off the warrant for this year, going back, asking PAR to look at that seriously as an option. What are the steps you have to take to just talk about just draining the pond? Then if something remains to be done with the trees, you can just have Mo go down with a chainsaw and take down the trees and leave the roots in the embankment. And there's no longer a body of water behind it to filter through, which is John's concern. And legitimate concern, not dismissive of it at all. And then the problem just sort of goes away. I'm not saying that's going to be a $0 solution, but hopefully,
I think it'll be actually, it'll be much more than $0 if you ask PAR their opinion on what was required to do this. And not because of the engineering costs, but because
The permitting and everything else.
all of the associated permitting and the fact that you still are going to have an issue with the sediment behind the dam and what happens to that when you do this. And then the other issue is going to be that there's a sluiceway with retaining walls. And if that stays in place, if you have a large rain, you still accumulate water behind the dam, actually a lot of water, because it can't come out through the hole fast enough. And so again, the dam still functions as a dam in that case. So there's still potentially a safety issue. I think that's what we'll hear, but it's certainly worth asking somebody who's an actual real dam engineer about.
Yeah. Does that cost money to have them do that study?
Yes, it does. To have them think about things costs money.
Yeah.
But
Well,
If they write things down, it costs even more.
This estimate you have here of 50,000, that was to take care of trees.
That's the trees, yeah.
but you
Could you use some of that 50?
Yeah, we have funds from, that we already allocated to farm that it could be redirected.
So I'm wondering if rewording this article to say that it be used for either or in other words, don't restrict it to just trees. Allow yourself to use some of this money for the study that we need to get to the information to make this hard decision. You know what I'm saying?
It is not clear to me, that's the full statement, whether we have enough left over from fiscal 25
Okay.
to do this. And I have to look to you guys to tell me that. If you got enough, we don't have to appropriate more. That's wonderful. If we don't, obviously we listen to that.
So right now, we thought we had the $50,000 that you gave us from the town gave us from 2025. And then there was the funds from 2019 that were about, at the time, left over like 26,887. But I think we've had some inspection costs to apply to those. So my figures are they're down to 22,000, give or take. So we probably have, if we have to pay PAR the full amount of money that is owed on the $24,900 contract, which they might be willing to amend, particularly if they're getting another contract to do different nature of work, which would mean that they're not doing the permitting. We'd take the permitting costs out, which would save us about $13,000 if they were willing to do that. We would probably have, let's just end up 41,000, but then we're less like the 4,000, so 37, 35. I had available 41,000, but that's going to be less. The 4,000 is going to be less. 26 minus 22 is going to be less 4,000, so it's going to be like around 37,000. But it could be then plus, so it's going to be lowest around 30,000, and at the most it might be another.
It's likely going to be enough.
13,000.
If we just do like an engineering study, it's likely going to be enough.
To do that.
Yeah, because we already have the data.
Without the
collection and
50, you
stuff
mean,
like
without
that.
asking for the additional.
Yeah, if that's the direction.
That sounds like that's a better direction, at least that, or, the way to go through the process. That gives you information before you spend the 50, right?
Right,
But keeping in mind, just so that we're all on the same page, is that that's using the money that's in that 2019 account, which has also been talked about, using that for funding the inspections that are required as we go forward. So we would still need money for inspections, which is actually
Yeah.
why when we did this as a preliminary matter, we thought maybe the way to set aside money for the inspections and know that we have it would be to have a deposit, money funded in the conservation trust fund. I don't know if that would be an more,
Before we
an
talk
operating
about
budget.
that, though, let me just ask a question. The original 26 or whatever the number is, that article that where that original allocation came from. Did that have, what was the wording of that article and the use of
And
that?
well, that's complication. So that's in your 345 pages, but that original.
God,
That original wording was, it granted the select board the authority in consultation with the Conservation Commission to use it for, I think it was for for essentially engineering consulting services for, I think, the alternatives analysis that they did
Oh, okay.
in 2020.
So that fits then. Yeah.
So it's really the same.
Yeah, okay.
$26,888, so.
And this really, what we're really talking about is expanding the alternatives.
Yeah, okay.
So-
That makes sense. You do that first before you start cutting down trees.
Okay, so-
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed that part of that
You
conversation.
figure out what this is gonna involve,
Mhm.
you get a good, hopefully, plan going forward. And then maybe this time next year, we take a look at this.
I think it's unlikely we get out of cutting down the trees, but
Okay.
there is a logic still.
Does the timing of that have to be? Like, do you need the 50 to do that? Does it have to be done this year?
The trees.
Yeah.
No,
No.
I mean, it had to be done
in
in 2018.
Okay, so it's not urgent.
unless, well,
PDF.
unless no tree falls, right?
Hey, Joe.
I mean, it really needs to be a shared risk, because if another tree falls, like, there could be anything that could happen that we can't predict, right?
Yeah.
Which is why it really needs to be a conversation and a shared, sort of understanding and a
So
shared.
so you think
It's not-
we're gonna have to cut some trees down? The question is how many, right? And how.
Yeah.
How much
That's actually true. It could well be that you cut down fewer for one of
Yeah.
these options.
Yeah, okay.
And forgive my ignorance on the topic, if the dam fails, what happens other than water gets released?
It would likely flood Route 27 plus one house downstream.
That's from New Orleans on 27,
Right.
right,
It's
when
not,
the water goes.
it's not what you would call it catastrophic.
Well, no, I was looking on the map. I was trying to figure out which way.
Yeah, there are,
So.
there is a house downstream that would see some water.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be swept away exactly, but yeah, it
But it would be soft.
How deep is that pond?
Not
3
very about
feet.
3 feet, 3 feet.
3 feet, yeah,
Yeah. But, and it covers a couple of acres?
yes. Yeah.
Does that qualify as a
About
pond or a
8
big puddle?
Well, yeah, that's how you count it. It's like the main body of the
I was
pond.
using Google Earth.
Yeah, in total,
more than
as
2
you
acres,
said,
it's about
it's
8
more than
acres.
that. It's a lot of it is kind of swampy, but I think in total it's like 8 acres.
So I think we've sort of come to our plan.
Yeah,
We
okay.
withdraw this article.
We have a
You
conservation
usually
commission
then
vote.
say if the Concom votes to do so.
Right,
If you spend it's probably less than 76,000, but we don't know precisely how much you've got to spend. You spend a chunk of that on a study with PAR, or somebody else if you want.
we
to
just,
contract
so we're on the
somebody
same
else.
page, we don't have 76 at this point, we've spent some of the 50 already, and we have inspections, so we have probably maybe between 40. About 40 to 50, depending on if we can negotiate the contract with them and
The
get
PAR's
back.
already done for the
13,000.
groundwork that can be applied to it evaluating other scenarios, right? So,
I think
Okay.
so,
All right.
right.
So can we, you have another article that we haven't got to yet.
Well, it's a conservation trust fund, and the reason that we put that in and the ask was for the $5,000 because we thought it would cover. The goal was to, if we were going to go forward with the tree work, to use all available money today to do the tree, get the tree work done, because doing the tree work might change the safety rating on the dam and might obviate the need for the
6 month
periodic
inspections.
inspections. So we might not need that money that's sitting in that 2019, from that 2019 allocation. It needs to be used for Danielson Pond related stuff. So the thought was, let's pour the money in to get the tree stuff done if that was going forward, and then ask for money in the Conservation Trust Fund for we know we're going to have 2 more inspections. We're going to have one this fall, in fall of 2026 and spring of 2027. So we're asking for an amount of money that would cover those inspections. And then, maybe it should be in an operating budget, but we don't know for how long those inspections will go on. And if it's a capital budget item, you're budgeting out like 2 years more. So there's no money in anybody's budget right now, specifically for those inspections. So that's what that ask is for.
Okay. So that, and we did that last year,
Yes.
too, right? Yeah, so that seems, unless they may have any problems with that one seems fine. Okay,
I like it because it gives them a little bit of flexibility
Yeah.
this year if they need it for inspections or whatever.
okay. Okay, good. All right.
Any other questions for us?
No.
No,
Okay.
no. If I get to page 300 and I might call you.
No, just take that file and you can delete it.
All right.
I think we're going.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
Yeah, well,
And
thank
keep
you
us
for your help,
posted
Jen.
on what's going on.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for, you're doing a ton of work for the town. Thank you very much.
All right. Going past our 8:30 time. We've only got through 3 articles. 4 articles, I guess.
We can present at the next meeting for the article. So if you want to move on, yeah.
These are pretty easy to get through. They don't require a lot of discussion. The rest of the articles, I mean, it's more.
Whatever you want to do, we're fine.
Let's go fast forward.
Did we switch gears then?
Whatever you want to do.
What do you?
I have a question. Did Maria stay? Because she thought she was presenting tonight. Is she on here?
No, she's on
Oh,
the.
she's on.
Next.
Okay.
The zoning,
She was just here for entertainment.
zoning is next week. So.
We don't close.
Well, I
at
feel
7:30,
bad
so
because her, but okay. All right, if we're not keeping Maria, fine.
No. Everybody was just here because we're open till 7.
Okay.
By the way, I forgot to hand this out. This is just the current list of articles. And
Steve, you extra copies of the survey document?
oh yeah, no, help yourself. Help yourself.
Those 2 on the corner.
Responses.
There was, I
pulled this
Oh,
back.
great. Oh, thank you.
Found my response.
Um,
Do we have those 2?
which one? Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Okay, here we go. So these are I did add, there's a new article that they added, the dog walking licensing fee. That wasn't on the list. I signed it to Emily. So she's not here. Just- I'm hoping that one gets, do you think that one's gonna move forward? Or?
I don't think it's gonna move forward. We don't have a draft of the language yet, and so I don't think we'll have a draft of the language before we finalize the warrant. But
Okay.
the select board will be discussing that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and the dog bylaw committee is just getting started as well.
Yeah,
In certain places, so yeah.
I'm sure Mike Pastore would love to have one less article.
He would love 5 less articles. Yeah.
Especially one less time.
Dog article. All right.
This list is I believe the somewhat controversial articles, not any others. So we hope that there are some generic articles,
Controversial.
right? Well, the operating.
No, that should match up with the warrant though.
Yeah, yeah, you're talking about that list. I mean, these are what I call the non-routine articles. So they're not articles we get every year.
Okay.
So they could be controversial. And
I was thinking some of these might well be controversial.
Yeah,
Suggesting
yeah.
those not listed here might not be, but then I thought, wait a minute, there's the whole operating.
The operating budget, that is listed, but not listed actually, but You have the,
Yes, are you ready for that? Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna switch gears to talk about our budget scenarios and I put together some a slide deck here, just in case anybody watches this later on. I think it might be helpful. You can go to the next slide. So really, I just want to talk about what potential decision making is and our a plan maybe for us to talk about how we would go forward deliberating on this override. So I said last meeting that it would be a prudential decision. It's a judgment-based decision. There's no formulaic approach to this. It's going to require our judgment. We have to balance competing good outcomes, and there's no single correct answer. All the budget growth scenarios are legitimate choices. Next slide. And sort of the principles, I think was it Scott McDermott told me when I first got on the warrant committee, like you have to wear a different hat. Like your job is to weave the fabric of the town. So we all might have personal opinions on things, but we have to put on our warrant committee hat when we talk about this stuff and consider broader townwide implications. And so stewardship of public resources is important, maintaining essential services and long-term financial sustainability and transparency and making sure we can defend what we ultimately decide. So next slide. So why this is a difficult decision, I think you know this, but the service levels compared against the tax burden, right? That's the ultimate, tough trade-off. The scenarios affect different groups in town differently, and they all have different impacts in terms of long-term impacts. So reasonable people can reach different conclusions. So that's why it's so hard. Next slide. We all know this. These are the scenarios that we are looking at. The six there are the override scenarios, and then we also have a scenario where there's no override, and we just limit. We don't approve an override. We just limit the Prop 2.5. It's limited to the Prop 2.5 budget, 1.8%. Next slide. Yeah.
I may have just missed it, but did we discuss possibly going beyond the 4.59% for the school? Isn't that what they would like?
So here you're correct. We haven't discussed that as a committee, but I've made a judgment. We can talk about it, but that the school. Our first ask was both school and the town to give us a level service budget. And that's what the 5% represents.
Correct.
It's level service. So it's on there because it's what we asked for. That tells us what's same people, same programs, what's the cost. Okay.
And I thought the 4.59% was level services after they've moved certain things into revolvers or other things.
Yeah. So what we're doing is, you'll see it later on. That's called a cut or change, savings or whatever. So we're not going to continue. So every time they come up with a new idea, we're not going to change the definition of level service. Level service is level service. Okay, they came up with some retirements and they changed the pricing of the kindergarten program. That's how they got down to the 4.59.
Right. You'll
see that as identified later on as a cut. Okay. So that's a scenario, 459 and the 3.3, but the level service is 5 and a 3.6.
5%, that's what Jeff Lawson presented in December. First budget was
Yeah.
5%.
I do
Then in January, he brought it down to the 3.9. The school brought it back up to 5.
Right.
And then we came down to 4.59. So this is the fourth iteration.
I think it's in our deliberations, it's a legitimate scenario. It's what we asked.
Question legitimacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, next slide. So the so these are the dollar, this is just a graphical depiction of the dollar amount of cuts by school and town. You can see it's overwhelmingly associated with schools, but town, simply because it has a smaller budget, has smaller cuts. And it's shown by the different scenarios. Obviously, the level service has no cuts. And then if we don't pass an override, we have significant cuts on the other end. 1.67, almost $1.7 million. Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to highlight, I think, because there's so much, we've had a lot with schools and they're legitimately, and I like the principles we have laid out here that this is all hard for good reason. It's been striking to me hearing the town departments and how razor thin they've gotten their expenses down to. So while it looks like smaller, the pink versus the blue, looks smaller, I want to just highlight again the impact of a lot of those.
Yeah,
I think it tends to get pushed aside because the schools is so huge, and it's something I think we want to keep putting it back on the table because it is so striking how many departments or how many areas are down to really there's nothing left to cut.
Right. No, that's a good point. I think good point. So next slide. These are again, going through our spreadsheet, right? We calculated what the override would be, including a contribution to the stabilization fund. This is the graphical depiction of that, right? So it's the override for the level service is, over $3 million. And the scenario on the far right is no override, so there's $0 associated with that. So this is kind of just, I think this, but these are just right from the spreadsheet that I sent everybody. Next slide. So this is the impact to the average single family home. The $1,028,000 average assessed value under the different scenarios. So it ranges from, for a level service budget, it's almost $1,200. And then for no override, it's $400. Okay, that's all this shows. Now, I couldn't come up with a way to graphically depict all three of these on the same slide. So the next slide just shows you the dollars, okay? Because they're all different, X and Y axes, right? So you can see these are dollars. We're talking about school cuts and town cuts under the different scenarios. So for example, if there's no override, it's $1.4 million of cuts for the school and $254,000 for the town. Okay. And then obviously the other scenarios for growing, the cuts go down in size. The override is the opposite, right? So if there's the amount of the override is 3.3 for a level service budget, and then if there's no override, it's 0, right? And you can see the average single family home. This is the impact. So you could see this includes the normal Prop 2.5 piece plus the override. So the bottom right, you'll see no override. It's $400. So if we don't do any override, the taxes will go up $400. the impact of the override is about $165 between the override and the 2.5% scenario, right? The 566 and the 401. That's how that works. Any questions on that slide? I think this is going to be our slide that we keep coming back to.
Yeah.
Because it has it all in one slide, okay? At least the way I think about it. This is, I think, how we're gonna have to, think about things. The next slide is we got this information from Yvonne. This is the profile of single-family homes, their assessed values. So I thought this might be interesting piece of information for us to have. You can see the biggest break point or biggest grouping of homes is the 650 to 850 category, probably like 1,100 homes in that category. And this is a tab on the spreadsheet I sent you. So if you want the actual numbers, you can look at the spreadsheet. But she took assessed values and just broke it down into different groupings. So you can see where, there's very few assessed values at the high end, right? And the groups that seems to have, I would say it's between 650 and the 1.2 million. That is over half of the assessed properties in town.
It's 56%, I think, on the first three bars.
Yeah.
Going up to $1 billion. It was like 56%. And when I did the third one, the fourth bar, it brought it to like 70 something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of taxpayers fell below that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So between 650 and 1.25, 71.
That's not to say that homeowners in these other categories are not important, but this is how the data falls out. All right. Next slide. So this takes the school department's priority of cut and it segments them into the different scenarios. So the way this works is, Peter, this is getting to your question. So we have the level service budget is 46,828,000. The savings from the retirement of the 2 teachers and the tuition increase for the kindergarten reduces that by 182,000. That gets you to your 4.59 school budget. Okay, that scenario. And then the next grouping of cuts gets you down to the 3.9 budget, the one that Jeff recommended. And you can see on the school side, there's moving of the custodian to a revolver, a professional development program for teachers in the summer, a district initiative committee work, some technology expenses that got moved to the town side. And then there's some FTEs. Then you get into FTEs. There's like a half of a central office FTE. There's an admin. And then there's 1 high school teacher in that grouping. So all those cuts above that get you down to the 3.9 budget. And then it just goes on from there. To go from 3.9 to 3.5, there's 2 teachers at Dale Street. And then if we go further, it impacts 1.4 at Wheelock and 1 more teacher at the high school. And if we think it's a 3% budget, there's 2 teachers at the Blake Middle School. And then the last category are these are the things they thought were the most important. The high school, Dale, and Wheelock and Dale. These positions they thought were most important. So it goes from what's least important cuts to most important, and it just breaks them down into the different growth categories, scenarios that we're studying. Everybody understand that?
In terms of restoration, that's what.
Yeah. Everybody understand that? Yeah.
That's what you said, Joe.
In terms of restoration, that weren't bottom up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Now, we have a similar slide for the town. Now, to your point, Elizabeth, the town's cuts are so small, there's a lot of little ones on here, right? And because every little $1,000 matters to the town. And a lot of their cuts, don't involve, they went through a lot of effort to not involve people. So these are, have different impacts. The first one is they went from a full-time to a half-time HR person. And then that gets you to their number, their growth percentages are different than the town. So they start out at 3.6 level budget of $15 million. And these cuts to get down to the 3.3 is the halftime HR position. And then you get into the library, the GFOA budget book, overtime budget, park and rec, DPW grounds maintenance, town administrator, DPW services dog waste pickup, $20,000. So that one is in this category of when you move between 3.3 and 2.8. And then the facilities is a big one in there too. Municipal buildings maintenance. So, and this is what the select board voted in terms of priorities. So you can see the animal control officer is the most important one. They protected that. It's at the very bottom. Okay.
So in other words, that cut is made only if there's no.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Yep. Good way to put it. Yep. Yeah, that last category only gets made if there's no override. Everybody understand that? Okay. Next slide. Okay, so try to sort of sketch out what a good plan might be. And I'll get your feedback on this. My first 3 steps, I think we've completed. We've done the analysis. Unless people think we need more information, I think we've got it all in front of us. We've got the baseline for fiscal for the budgets. We know what the service impacts are. We know what the tax impacts are. And we've looked at the profiling of the assessed values. So the next slide, I think we should talk about this one. This is the question of multi-year sustainability. This is looking at what happens after 2027. And I just kind of threw 3 questions out here, but I think we need to talk about this. Does the scenario avoid structural deficits? Does it reduce the likelihood of another override soon? Or does it maintain reserves or bond stability? I think when we look at sustainability, the question of that second one, I think, is important. I think that it's hard to operate a $75 million budget, not thinking beyond 12 months. You have to hire people, you have to manage people, programs, departments. Not having certainty to that group of personnel for more than a 12-month period, having uncertainty, I think is not a best practice. So if we can eliminate that for like the school departments, think about how they have to, they might have to cut people, or they don't cut people this year, but they have to cut them next year. All that factors into, I think, some of our thinking. And the town, the same thing. It's more important, I think, on the school side. So I'm just going to go through these and then we can talk. The next slide is just community values. I think just aligning with residents' priorities. What do residents prioritize? What trade-offs are acceptable? And what level of service reduction is tolerable? These are not easy questions. Like I said, we have to make a prudential decision here, but use your best judgment.
When I was reading this over, this was the slide that sort of struck me, I guess I can say the most, because we don't have polling. I don't know what residents are thinking about this.
Yeah.
You know, we here in the Warrant Committee, we're steeped in this. We think about this stuff a lot.
Yeah.
The average homeowner, taxpayer in town, I don't have a clue. I mean, are they like, hell no, I don't want to see my taxes raised at all? Or are they, oh no, I'm totally okay with raising taxes to maintain a reasonable level of services? I just don't know. And there's a continuum in there where they fall, where people fall. I don't know. I don't know how one gauges that.
Yeah, I don't think we'll know for certainty that the answer to that question.
Right.
You're gonna have to use all your mental capacity and judgment.
Well, then we're
to figure
real.
that out.
The topic that generated the most email replies so far is part-time animal control officer.
Yeah,
So.
yes. But the select board has, they've considered that.
Yep.
That priority
Yep.
in their list, so.
Yep.
So that, I mean, the fact that that we do have prioritized list of cuts, I think helps with some of this, so. Next slide. So I thought the next step should be narrowing down these options. And my suggestion is that we try to get to preferably 2, but if we can't 3, I'd like to maybe get to 2 viable scenarios. And that, I think it would be great if we, at our next meeting, we could make a decision on one of them, narrow it down to 1. But we could talk about this, but I think it would, ideally, we have a working group meeting next Tuesday, St. Patrick's Day. And if I could go to them and say, the Warrant Committee thinks these 2 scenarios are viable, that would be helpful. Because then we could sort of do a sort of a, smell test. What do they think of that? And knowing that we will have to make that final decision. I'd like to do that on the 24th, if we can. Ideally, that's kind of how I was thinking this could play out. Because we're just running out of time. We have to move. We have to move this budget number forward and get to the next slide. Actually, we'll talk about that. So we get a recommendation, right? And then the next slide, it's really just we have this communication process, as educating the public on what we're doing here. And the sooner we can get to a consensus, the more time we have to communicate with the public. So, and then the next slide is just, again, reiterating things that we already said. Basically, it's a prudential decision that these variables are contradicting, and they vary amongst all the scenarios. So that one table with the numbers is the one that I think is the key. So, any more slides? Is that it? I think that's it. Yeah. So I don't know. Is there more? So I'll ask this question: do people need more information, or do you think we have enough?
I think not.
Yeah.
Got it sliced up with a bunch of ways.
Yeah.
Okay. You got to analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
But I think we have plenty of information.
Yeah.
I do have a question
Yeah.
about how when we move this forward, how we determine what is allocated towards the override stabilization reserve fund. How does that factor into all this?
Good question. So actually, why don't we take out that spreadsheet?
Does everyone have the big spreadsheet?
Does anybody need one?
We had one, I don't know what to do with
Everybody
it.
A nice placemat.
Computer.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I just asked them to print out one scenario. Doesn't mean this is the scenario that we should pick. I'm just saying I asked them to pick out one. So, if you go back to, that table, that's the,
The Bible.
yeah, the budget, this budget scenario table, this one here. So, see the column says total override, including stabilization. Everybody got that?
Yep.
If you look at the 3.5, the 2.6 scenario, it's got 1,606,511 for the total override, including stabilization. So this long sheet, let's call the millions, this 1,000,006 right here.
Mhm,
This tells you how it's calculated.
mhm.
So it basically, it takes. You need one of these, Brent?
Yeah.
Okay. It takes, basically takes the 26 budget. And then it escalates it by 3.5% for schools, 2.6 for the town. Okay, and it compares that to our remember the worksheets we were working on before, all fall, that Christine would give us. That calculated what the Prop 2.5 number was.
Mhm.
That's the 1.8. That's this number here. So it's 1.8 is the Prop 2.5.
Right.
So the difference between growing at 3.5% and the Prop 2.5 is the override. So the 761 for the schools and the 110 for the town adds up to 871. That's the piece of the 1.6 million that we need to cover 27. Okay. And then we do the same thing for 28, and this is 735 is the amount we put in a budget. I mean, we put it in the stabilization fund. So we know that the override of 1.6, 871 will cover 27, and 735 will be in a stabilization fund to cover the 28 budget. So we don't need a second over. That's how that works. And then we do this for each scenario. Does everybody understand that? Did you follow that, Elizabeth?
That's still,
I walked through here.
that's still less than what we need for 27. So there's still gonna be issues, right?
Well, it's less because the Prop 2.5 is bigger,
Right.
right? So remember, we had a little more growth in 28, so it's 2.1 is the Prop 2.5 versus the 1.8. So it is, you're right, it is a little bit less. But that's because our forecast for 28 was a bit more. Okay. So so to go through this again, we start with the 26. The 26, that 59,082. The remaining available for departments. We escalate that by 3.5 for the schools and 2.6 for the town. Comes up with an average of 3.28. So we get a forecasted budget of 61,020,457. And then we compare that to the Prop 2.5 column, the second column. That says if we're only limited to Prop 2.5 increase, the budget would be 60,149,000. But we want to grow, we want to override, so we want to grow it more than that. So we need an extra 871 for 27. And then for 28, you just take that 27 forecast column, the 61,20,000, and you grow that by 3.5% for the schools, 2.6 for the town. And you go through the same math, compare it to what the Prop 2.5 budget is for 28, which is 61,415,000, and you need an override of 735 for 28. So you add the two together, you add the 27 piece and the 28 piece to come up with an override of $1.6 million that we're going to ask voters to approve and add to the 27 tax levy at town meeting. With the promise, now here's the thing I haven't mentioned to you, I should talk to you about. I thought it was a good, some towns that have been successful with overrides have gotten their school committee, select board, and warrant committee to make a commitment statement. So I've started to draft a statement that haven't shown it to any of those committees yet. And so I think what we'll do is at our working group meeting on the 17th, I'll share it with them. And then at our next meeting, I'll give it a copy to all of you for your feedback. But my thought is it would be a commitment letter that would basically say, look, these three committees agree to, we're supportive of an override. We will limit the 28 budget increases to whatever percentage we decide. We will abide by some fiscal discipline. You know, there'll be some discussion of that in there. And that, you know, we will look for revenue opportunities. Like we'll support the state hospital, we'll look for fees where we can get them, we'll do all the things that we've talked about as a committee. I don't think people on this committee should have an issue with the statement. I'm hopeful that the school committee and the select board will support it. Because I think having that like in the warrant so that people can read it, I think will be helpful. You know. So I just want to mention that does this answer your question about how we get to the 28?
Yes.
All right. So what do people think about, are people, let's put it this way, do you have any thoughts on if we were to eliminate one or two scenarios? We don't have to get down to 2 or 3, but let's start with, you know, this slide up here, this, you know, this, you know, if you want to talk about certain scenarios, maybe we talk about the extremes, right? First, what people think about those.
I mean, it seems like the 2.5 doesn't get us very far, so it doesn't solve either problem. So it seems like that would be an easy, we're gonna start somewhere. So.
As Miko said, you took the words right out of my mouth.
Mhm.
I think it eliminates a lot of people in the top two.
Oh, you're going, oh, so you're getting it right down there, okay.
But top 2 meaning the 4.59?
5 and 4.59 and the 3 and the 2.5. But that's just me.
So I like having 5 and I like having 3.9. I like having the level service and I like having what the superintendent recommended.
Mhm.
I'm okay eliminating the rest of it. The sentiment that I've gotten a lot of feedback on, Peter, he was talking to people, is the underlying comment that I get a lot of, and I completely agree, is you're telling me in every scenario except 1, 2, we can get. Every scenario except 1, you're going to raise my taxes, we're still making that. I don't like it. I've heard that 2 dozen times in the last month. Now, I've heard a lot of people also, I heard 2 dozen comments. I pay enough as it is in taxes, I'm not gonna vote for it. So, as far as the people I've talked to, as far as I've talked to, I'm getting about a pretty close to 50-50 split between people who say, I'm okay if my taxes go up to fund what we got, and hey, enough as it is, and I don't want a lot of whatever.
Is there any way to take some sort of pulse survey of the community to like
But my thing is a little different from yours, which doesn't mean, of course. My feeling was if the school committee could live with 4.59. With the rejiggering the retirements and the putting some people into revolving accounts. I think that should be, my feeling is that should be the top figure and not have the 5.0 anymore. So I would drop that. And if you're gonna require cuts, this is purely seat of the pants. Who cares what Peter Michelson thinks? I just sort of think the 3.5, 2.6.
You're trying to balance the tax impacts with.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we gotta do. That's that,
Yeah, I mean,
seesaw.
yeah, that's the seesaw. And, you know, I mean, I'll just weigh in here. I think that, you know, there's a school of thought here that says you're gonna go with level service, you're gonna increase my taxes by $1,200 every year. And that may not be sustainable for some people, but some people, particularly where there's a school project that's gonna, you know, gonna be on top of that. So I mean, there's a core question of can we afford a level service budget of 5% every year? That's I think a core question. I don't know the answer to that. People will have different views on that. But I look at this list of cuts and how it impacts how it impacts the school. I don't see a lot of pain in the first, you know, getting down to the 3.9. I see some retirements. I see a custodian moving from into a revolver. I see some professional development work, some committee work being eliminated, central office position. I mean, there's only one teacher being cut there at a high school. I don't know what that position is, but
And it's probably important to note too, that this doesn't include what Dr. Marsden talked about at our last meeting. The school committee was going to look at bus fees as well. And, you know, if you even use a, conservative estimate, 100 students, 800 students take the bus all the time. You know, you impose $100 a student per year. I'm just pulling numbers out of thin air. More than enough revenue to offset,
right,
the teacher thing. So,
I mean,
at least that one position.
The problem I have with the level of service budget is that it kind of sends a message that, we want you to pay more taxes, and we don't think there's any cuts that can be made. That's kind of what it's saying. And we know that's not true looking at this. I mean, so I'm struggling with that level service budget.
Well, the level service of 5% is the highest that they've come in with in
Ever.
the years that I've heard. The reason it's so high this year is because you have the special ed transportation, the Connolly thing, and the impact.
Yeah.
Remember, we had 3 line items that cost us over $500 million.
Right.
So the typical school budget is going to go up between 4 and 4, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
Every year. That's your average.
Yeah.
Across the years.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of throw out the 5%. That's an anomaly.
Yeah, I agree.
I gotta say, I'm not disagreeing strongly with any of this, but I'm sort of back with what Elizabeth said earlier. I'm thinking also about the town budgets, which are the presentation by the fire chief. That was sort of dire sounding to me. And I didn't realize that till he made that presentation. So. And we've got a bigger problem with the fire department coming down the pipe next year, I'm aware. with those 4 positions. But, so part of me feels like we can give a little flexibility this year and next for the non-school department. I sort of favor that. That's not a diatribe against the school department.
Right.
That's the biggest budget in town for lots of good reasons.
Yeah.
It's the important service the town provides.
I think that, let me ask you this. Elizabeth made a suggestion that the 2.5 scenario doesn't really get us a lot. People agree with that?
Yes.
Is that what?
2.5 and 2.5.
It doesn't get us a lot, but it's inherently justifiable. I just want to make that point again, right? Because, 2.5% is it's different for us because we choose to separate out our fixed costs. But operating costs growing at 2.5% is at least the spirit of Prop 2.5. So anytime, it's very, very rarely since I've been on this committee, in fact, it's never happened that we've been unable to grow that side of those budgets at 2.5% until now. So that's at least inherently justifiable. Everything else is an arbitrary decision based on somebody else's suggestion of what they thought was level service, or what they thought they could get by with. That's the only number that's inherently justifiable. Now, I'm not necessarily going to say that's the only one I can support, but I don't want us to necessarily discount it simply because we don't like what it implies.
Yeah. So
I would gravitate. I would just say, by the way, 3.526 is about the highest I feel comfortable myself. And I say that on the basis of previous budget increases that we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years. That's in line with it. Sometimes we were able to get to 4.
Yeah.
Sometimes we had to settle for 3.5, 3.4.
Yeah.
But it at least to me it implies a continuity of previous years. So the other ones feel like we haven't fully got our head around the fact that unfortunately, we have a structural problem. That's just me.
So your point is that that the two. I think I said every scenario on here you could make a case that it's defensible, and then your point is the 2.5 is aligned with the prop.
Other.
I'm not dismissing.
Well, so at some point, of course, we have to defend whatever board choice is. But I assume we're going to have a singular choice.
Right. Yeah.
We'll have to defend it. But other choices require you to go now to the next page and look at individual cuts. And so you're making a decision on the basis of somebody's prioritized decisions.
Right.
And that to me is one in which every single one of the 13,000 residents might come from a different viewpoint, right?
Right.
So,
fair enough.
I'm trying to think of what's.
But they elect representatives that made those decisions.
I totally agree. Thank goodness for that.
Yeah. But I understand that's how you're right. I feel better because they, as committees, made those decisions. They're closest to, I guess, as elected officials, what the priorities of the town should be. So, which is why I thought it was important they weighed in on that. So,
I don't look at it from the perspective of what do we think the citizens will vote for? And I'm not, I think that's
What will
more
pass.
important to me, will pass versus how much the schools have to cut.
yeah, because the alternative
Yeah.
is not. Everybody agrees the alternative is draconian, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that to me the most important thing to look at is what's the impact on the taxpayer.
Well, how about just so we can get some consensus here? I'll throw this out. Can we rule out? I don't want to go as far as Ed suggested, but can we rule out the top and the bottom one, the 2.5 and the 5%? And then just and then we'll get some feedback from this working group next week and see of the 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 4 scenarios that are left. We can get down unless you think we can get to 2. I know it's 9:30, so
I said this last week that tuition for kindergarten, $3,500 is a check that I'll write right now. That's already in here. There's 2 full-time teachers retiring in here, and those 2 moves right there, get 4 or 5.
Yeah.
To me, that's good on the, on the school side. If I know school committee and I know the superintendent have their own, desire to move full-time kindergarten to free. Got 2 incoming kindergartners.
Yeah.
That it's not free and that it's gonna cost $7,000 is not in my head. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I mean, I look at, okay, so maybe we can eliminate those 2, the 5 and the 2.5. But I think, my guess is that, we may have, what do people, we haven't talked about it, what do people think about the average tax impact? Is there any magic to being below 800 or above 1,000? That impact people's decision?
I think the average taxpayer looking at $1,000 increase is gonna say no. Absolutely. That's $1,000 kind of.
Yeah.
And it's a, wow,
Yeah.
that's a big number. That's why I kind of look at, okay, 884, 782, that's well below the 1,000.
Right. Yeah.
And it still requires cuts in between.
Yeah.
It's
So you'd say,
I mean, as you say, you don't get anything for the 2.5, 550. So
Yeah.
You're only going up $166
right,
from
it's
the base 401.
right.
This is the incremental. You gotta look at the incrementals here. The 668, it's all right. So it's up 268, and the other one is 382.
Yeah.
Is the incremental cost of the override.
Mhm. And
I don't think those 2 numbers, if presented that way, it's a showstopper.
So that's why, I guess how you got to the 3.9 and 3.5. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, when you look at the impact on this prioritized list, say the schools, I don't think the town has a giant problem. I say a giant problem. Every amount of money matters for the town side, but the cuts are not people, right? That's the difference. On the school side, we're talking about people. So
There are people cut,
other people cuts.
there are
Sorry.
people cuts of positions that they've been vacated in the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And so I intentionally didn't fill them knowing we were gonna have this issue, but they are positions that we are losing.
Can you put up the town slide again? I don't have a copy of it.
Yes, George Avenue.
I'm getting confused. So the equivalent to the 3.9 budget is the 2.8? 3.9 to the 2.8. So it's this first group of cuts.
Yeah, so we have
The
land use department in there, the assessors. We moved to a halftime admin.
Oh, is that
So the land use department is the part-time administrator that we didn't fill. So that's a
which one is that? What's the amount of that one?
232251.
I don't see that on my schedule. Where's that? Oh, that's
towards the bottom, right above the on-call animal control.
Yeah.
okay. Maybe I'm not understanding you. So I'm looking at this first bucket,
Yeah, so
not down the bottom, up from the top down.
but if it's gonna be restored up to 2.8, you would restore from the bottom up.
No, that's different than the way the school's done it. So that's why I asked you that question. So,
Oh, then ours might be flipped. Ours goes from priority to the bottom.
The priorities
Yeah,
at the
That's
bottom.
not how I was
Yeah.
reading.
yeah,
it
that's
either.
not how I was.
We can
yeah.
Well, that's why I said, so if there's, the only way you do the on-call control, animal control.
The priorities at the school is at the bottom as well, because if you look, the custodians are.
Well, the priority to keep the cut is at the bottom. The
No,
priority to first cut is at the top of the school list. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so is ours.
so it's actually.
Right.
Okay, so we're saying the same thing now.
I think we are.
So the library
Yeah.
is the library reduction of 21,000. I'm sorry, your HR halftime person is the number one cut.
Yes.
Because we cut it in half. We're cutting it.
So that's your first cut to happen. Then we go to the library.
Yeah.
Next. So to get down to the 2.8 budget,
It's everything above that.
it's everything above that.
Yeah.
It doesn't include the thing you were talking about, the land
The
use.
people, sorry. I thought you were making a general statement. that We didn't. include people. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to talk about getting,
Yeah, sorry. I thought you were talking about in general.
how hard are these cuts to get down to a 3.9, 2.8 budget? 3.9 schools, 2.8 for this.
Yeah.
And this is that list, so it's, I'm doing the same thing I did
got you.
for the school. I looked at what they're,
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
that's the
I thought you were making in general.
This is the question. So when I see $1,000 increase, look, nobody likes paying real estate taxes. It arrives in the mail, you're like, oh, take. But you see $1,000 increase and you go, well, $20 a week, 50 weeks a year, $1,000, $20 a week. I'm not thrilled, I'm not happy, but what the hell? I take it your face right now, in addition to what you said earlier, you don't think anybody thinks about it that way.
No, because I think if you were getting billed in your MasterCard or the Visa $20 a week, you wouldn't be pay attention to it. But you have to bill every quarter and it's $400 or $500, whatever it is, more divided by 4, then it is noticeable. And when they think about it, oh, my taxes right now, 10,000, it's gonna go to.
Nobody likes taxes.
I know they know, like, I think they're thinking about it in aggregate when they're sitting in the audience.
Yeah.
Not broken down by.
I mean, I get it, the school committee, who was it, Will Horn said, oh, it's a couple meals out, kind of thing. And I get that, but people don't think that way. I agree with that. People focus on, what's the impact.
Yeah.
I guess. We talked about the commitment statement a little bit ago. We also raised the issue around a safer grant and some of that. I mean, there's some risk here in. Where's the number that is going to let us deal with some of those? I mean, there are contractual labor issues, especially on the town side. I mean, going back to what Pete raised, is some of these things that are baked in for next year, and we're going to make a commitment that we're going to, try to stay away from another override. Have we built in enough to make sure we can get close to that? I mean, like safer just is right off the top, right? That's a pretty significant on a percentage basis for the town. That's not small.
Well, I turned to Christine to I thought we looked
So
at
that's
that.
gonna be in fiscal year 28, and we're raising the fees for ALS to help offset that. And we're gonna draw more from the ALS revolving fund to try and keep those in budget.
So they think it can be worked.
Yeah. We're trying to be as creative as
Christine's
possible.
got it, is what she said.
Trying to be as creative as possible.
So we feel like, I guess that we feel like these scenarios are, to the best of our knowledge, kind of where we think they're representative of what we think is going forward to the best of our knowledge, given current information.
I don't think so. I said this before. I think that, let's say you went with the 3.9 or the 3.5, one of those two. When the schools do their budget of 28, they're gonna come in at higher than the number that we have on the spreadsheet. But what they're gonna have to do is commit to do additional cuts to get back to the number that's on the piece of paper.
That's why in this commitment statement,
Right.
we've got in here that the annual, the Medfield Public Schools annual operating budget growth in 28 will not exceed X%, whatever we decide. So, and the town will make a similar commitment.
I did a quick calculation this afternoon, and I just said, okay, if the school goes up 4% instead of the 3, I forget which I used, 3.5 or 3.9, they'd have to cut another 200,000 next year to get to the goal. That's why you need to put that in there. Yeah, remember they have to.
Yeah,
But
well, we are.
Fingers. Yeah,
Sign in blood.
cut your fingers.
Don't have any left.
The joke about
We're gonna use your fingers, Peter.
But I think, well. So I mean, are people comfortable with, I guess, Ed's recommendation of the 3.9 and the 3.5? I know that it has one option that you said you would. No,
I'm going, unless you go 5 or 4.9 or 4.6, I'm going to support any of the override because we need the override.
Yeah.
So if this body says it's going to be 3.9, I'm going to support 3.9. I'm not going to be the one saying no, don't vote for it.
Okay.
But I mean, so yeah, those two are in the ballpark. You know, I mean, 884 is twice the tax increase you would otherwise have. To me, that's a key number.
Yeah.
It isn't the absolute dollar amount, because remember, it's going to go up by another 400 next year, and 400 over that, 400 over that, because it goes up every year by 2.5%. So it's not just what this year, right? And then this is a permanent increase in the tax levy. So I just feel like we run a risk if we only talk about it from a static perspective, instead of saying we're really trying to think about, you know, the trajectory of your taxes through time, longitudinal trajectory as long-term residents of Medfield, right? So I think that, so yeah, I kind of balk at it when it gets over 1,000, I mean, just because it's 2.5 times what the average home would be increasing anyway.
Yeah.
None of this really solves the structural deficit. This is a good Band-Aid for 2 years. And then, as you said, we had this conversation last time, we get into 29. That, you know, instead of having that, you know, 1.8 or 2.1, it might be 3 or 3, a little over 3, because when I will have the hospital, Trinity kick in.
Yeah, I think
It's just a Band-Aid.
I think of it as I call it a bridge.
A bridge.
It's a bridge to 29 when the hospital hopes
such a poetic guy.
the hospital comes, you know, I think that's kind of how we have to talk about it. It's right. It says
Bridge over troubled waters.
2 years, it'll be Joe and Ashley's.
Yes.
Only if I get reappointed.
The
We
3.9
could
seems
take
like
that.
the sweet
The way
spot,
you
right?
What's that?
3.9 seems like the
Sewer
sweet spot.
issue, no question.
Is that what we're saying?
Well, I think the suggestion was that we narrow it down to 3.5 or 3 and 3.9 and take that to the working group. Then take their feedback. And next time we meet, we'll share the feedback and then we'll make a decision. So
At least between the two. I do like the 3.9. Superintendent put a lot of thought into that, and that's where he came to.
Does have that advantage.
okay. We're not forcing that decision yet.
No, but also like whichever one of these, speaking for my wife and myself, whichever one, the highest one on here, we're both going to support.
Okay.
A lot of my neighbors feel the same way.
Okay.
I know that's not the same everywhere in town. But that's what I'm going to do personally.
Okay.
Ask me a question.
Yeah.
Obviously, is there any advantage to going into that working group? So not endorsing right now as a vote, but kind of saying for your working group conversation to go in with one, to kind of like versus two that are close together. Does that help you in any way in your conversation?
But it doesn't give them, it's, then you're not asking for their input. You're just telling them what you think. I think that's probably not the right way to go about it. I mean, I'll share the honest opinions of like, we have, we came down to these two. There's some people who would support the highest amount that, as a committee, we approve. Nobody has, the other problem is we have two people on the committee that aren't here tonight, so.
Right.
I can assure you, everybody on the working group's gonna watch this meeting before our working group meeting.
Yeah, they're gonna hear what you just said.
Taking a position. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Everybody comfortable with that approach? Yeah. Okay, all right. Okay, so, I think we will just, the warrant articles, this updated schedule, I handed out to everybody. That's what we'll do next time. Well, we'll actually, all the ones we were supposed to do tonight, we'll have to cover next meeting, which is quite a few of them, but,
Okay, and we'll send out, I have, 2 updated articles that town council finished today. I will send out a new draft.
yeah,
With those included in.
okay. And then, any updates, Pete, on the school building committee?
Yeah, I'm a little distant from it, but they did have interviews with the 3 finalists for the OPM position. They were going to get together to meet and score the 3 finalists based on their impressions of the in-person interviews.
Yeah,
And I assume that's happened by now, but I don't know the outcome of it. I don't know which of the 3 finalists they've selected. This now, once they have a choice, it gets submitted to the MSBA. And the MSBA has reserved itself the right to turn down. They say they don't do what we've heard anecdotally is that they do that not infrequently with the architect, they do it less with the OPM. But there was one instance that Bob Worth knew about where, I think it was Bob, but it was somebody else, but where someone picked an OPM and the MSBA said, no, they just got a big project in Brockton. We don't think they can handle yours and Brockton. Go pick somebody else. So we're not there yet, but the goal is mid-April to have an OPM. And then we'll start down the road towards picking an architect, which is
okay,
more involved.
okay, good. Anything on the capital budget committee?
That's a
Oh,
surprise.
that's good. All right, unless there's anything else, entertain a motion to adjourn.
You should know on April 6th, who the OPM is, that's when MSBA is meeting.
On April 6th?
I'm aware of that. I'm going to that.
Good.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Where
With these, it's like, that's the line.